My name is Louise Carter, but everybody on our block calls me Miss Lou. I turned 68 this past spring, the kind of age where your bones know the weather a day before the forecast does, but your mind still moves like a church usher on Easter Sunday. Fast, precise, and looking out for everybody. I didn't expect to be a widow this soon. Daniel and I made it 51 years. We met outside a corner store in West Baltimore when I was 19, and he had paint under his fingernails from a job that barely paid. He used to say, "Lou, life is just wood and memory. You learn the grain and it'll hold." He taught me to run my fingers along the world until I knew where it would split. The night before his second stroke took him, the hospital hummed like a refrigerator and smelled like bleach. I sat there feeding him ice chips with a plastic spoon, the TV on mute, the volume of our lives turned down so low we had to lean in. He squeezed my hand, hard enough that my wedding band bit my skin. "Lou," he whispered, the sound thin as paper. "You promise me something." "Name it," I said, because if loving somebody means anything, it means you don't make them ask twice. "Don't tell the boys," he said. "Not about the gold. Not about the Florida place. Not about that account in your name." He breathed like each sentence cost him. "Just watch him. Watch before you decide." I wanted to argue. Secrets rot families from the inside out. But his eyes were clear even with all that fog around us. Daniel had always seen things before they arrived. Bad weather, layoffs, who would show up when the check was short. "Promise," he said again, and I heard the plea sitting under the word like a bass line. "Promise." He fell asleep holding my fingers like he was making sure I didn't float away. And in the morning, I had to unclasp his hand from mine. The funeral came fast and slow. If you've ever laid a man to rest, you know time gets funny. We buried him on a Saturday, the sky that clean blue Baltimore gets in late September, the kind that makes all the brick look new. People we loved showed up with covered dishes and pressed suits and hugs that lasted too long or not long enough. I sat in the front pew with the choir behind me and his picture to my left. Him in that navy suit, the one he wore when Andre graduated and when Marcus finally stopped running long enough to earn his GED. Reverend Brooks preached like he was trying to cut a path through jungle, sweat on his brow and his handkerchief going back and forth like a metronome. I kept looking at the empty space on the bench where Daniel's knee should have touched mine. After the graveside, the house filled like a pot at a boil. Macaroni and cheese sweating under foil, sweet tea in mismatched pitchers, people pressing my hands and telling me how strong I was, as if strength were a coat I'd put on instead of a thing you grow over years of being told no by the city and maybe later by the bank. My neighbor Margot washed dishes and set them back wrong and I let her. The lilies on the mantel perfumed the whole living room. I was grateful and tired and hollow and full, all at the same time. By Monday, the casseroles looked like how grief feels on day 3. Collapsed at the edges, covered by plastic wrap that fogs anyway. I was at the sink rinsing a coffee mug when I saw Andre's sedan pull up, black and too clean for our street. He got out in his church suit, that careful smile he uses when he's about to ask hard things. Marcus rolled up a minute later in his pickup, baseball cap pulled low, engine cutting off like a cough. "Ma," Andre said, his voice all soft cloth and polished wood. "How you holding up?" "As well as a woman can when she puts her husband in the ground," I said, because I don't like lying even when it would smooth the room. "We thought we'd stop by, help you get a handle on some things," he said, lifting a leather folder like a prop. Marcus didn't sit. He paced near the table, hands on his hips, then in his pockets, then on his hips again. The boys fill space the way their father filled a room. Present, heavy with intention. Andre opened the folder and slid a paper towards me on the table like he'd practiced it in the mirror. "Just a standard authorization," he said. It'll help us simplify probate, pay off any debts, make sure you're not burdened. Marcus finally sat, but only halfway. Ma, we can list the tools, the extra stuff. You don't need all those machines cluttering up the garage no more. I took my glasses off, cleaned them with the edge of my shirt and put them back on. The paper was full of words that look friendly. Streamline, protect, consolidate, until you see the one that matters. Control. I traced the paragraph headers with my finger. Andre watched my hand like he was watching the second hand of a clock. Polite, patient, urgent underneath. Marcus tapped his knee and stared at the mantle like it had money tucked in the flowers. Who drew this up? Yes. A friend at the firm, Andre said, too quick to be offhand. He specializes in probate. This is routine, Ma. Marcus leaned in. We're not trying to run your life. We just want to make this easier before bills start piling up and folks come sniffing around. I looked from one to the other and tried to see the babies. The boys with sticky cheeks and skinned knees. Grief can make you imagine things into people that are not there. I saw Daniel sanding in circles with them, teaching them to read the grain, and I felt the weight of his requests sitting in my chest. Watch before you decide. So I watched my eldest shape his mouth around the word protect like a good son and a lawyer. I watched my youngest pace because stillness would make him say something true. I watched how neither one of them asked me if I wanted to sell a single thing. I folded the paper back toward Andre, slow and neat. I appreciate your concern, I said. And your hustle. But we're not signing anything today. Marcus's jaw jumped. Ma, let me bury my husband before you come measuring windows for sale, I said, and the room went quiet enough I could hear the clock over the stove tick. Andre smoothed his tie like it had bunched up on its own. Of course. We just thought. You thought I was a problem to solve, I said, not unkind. I'm your mother to listen to. They both nodded. Two grown men bobbing like boys at the dinner table. They stayed for coffee they didn't drink, made noises about calling later, hugged me like they meant it, and left that paper on the table as if proximity could convince me. When the door shut, I sat down, laid my palm on the table where Daniel's hand used to rest, and let the quiet rush me for a minute. The house smelled like lilies and pine sol and the edge of autumn coming through a cracked window. I thought about the red folder in the cedar chest, the safe deposit key tucked where mothballs used to live, the Florida deed written in a trust name that sounded like a shell company because it was. I thought about gold heavy as truth, numbered and listed in Daniel's blocky handwriting. I thought about my husband saying not to punish, to protect, and my sons using the language of love to ask for leverage. I poured the coffee down the sink, rinsed the cup, and dried it with a towel that had our last name sewn in by my mama 40 years ago. I promised Daniel I'd watch before I decided. Then they brought a notary. I woke up the next morning to a world that was pretending to be normal. The trash truck clanged down the block. Margot's grandson bounced a basketball against cracked sidewalk, and the mail slid through the slot with that soft, apologetic sound grief makes when it tries to carry on. I put on my housecoat and tied it twice, because sometimes you need to cinch yourself in. By 9 my phone rang. Miss Lou. It's Reverend. His voice had that careful cushion around it pastors use when they're delivering news you won't like. I wanted to touch base about a small, logistical idea the boys brought me. They asked if the church might host an estate sale this Saturday. Give the congregation a first chance at Daniel's workshop, tools, some household items. They framed it as a blessing to you and to the church. I sat very still, as if any movement would spill the anger I was keeping level inside. Saturday, said Reverend, we buried Daniel 4 days ago. I understand, Sister Louise. He went soft on that sister, trying to wrap me in it. They seemed concerned about you being overwhelmed. I cooked in that kitchen with one breast less and a chemo bag tied at my waist. I said, not loud, just factual. Overwhelmed, and I have met before. Silence on his end, then a sigh. I can push back. You won't need to, I said. Because there's not going to be an estate sale at my church. Not this week, not next. If we sell anything, I'll make that call. Please tell my sons to bring all further ideas to me, not to your office. I hear you, he said, and I believed he did. But once a ball is rolling, it doesn't always care who hears it. I hung up and stepped onto the porch. The air had that wet metal scent before rain. Margot called across the hedge. You need anything, Lou? I made grits. I need you to tell me the truth, I said. Have you seen anybody around my garage? She bit her lip. Yesterday I saw two fellas, not from around here. Open your side door with a key. Marcus waved when he saw me, said they were helping you get started. I didn't want to trouble you, baby, with all you got going. My stomach went cold and flat. You did right to tell me now. I slipped my feet into Daniel's old house shoes and crossed the driveway. The side door to the garage was locked. I unlocked it and stood a second in the doorway, letting my eyes adjust to the half-light. The smell of motor oil and sawdust rose to meet me like an embrace. His workbench sat patient under the window, stained with a map of his life. Walnut, cherry, sweat. The pegboard where he hung his wrenches was a mouth with teeth missing. An empty square ghosted where the miter saw should have been. I felt for the bench with my hand, the way you find a friend in a dark movie theater. Not today, I said. The words came out steady, and that steadiness surprised me. I pulled my phone and called Marcus. He answered like a man in a hurry. Yeah, Ma. You sent people to my garage. Just to take stock. We gotta move quick before. You don't have to do anything but answer to me, I said. Bring back what left this garage yesterday, and bring it back before noon. Beep. Ma, be reasonable. Those things are just sitting. Like your father's hands are just sitting in the ground. I let the question sit between us until I heard his breath hitch. Noon, I repeated and hung up. Called Andre next. He took longer to answer, maybe choosing his words before he pressed accept. Mom, I was just about to check in. Call off the church sale, I said. And don't you ever take your ideas to my pastor before you take them to me again. Of course, he said, voice smooth like a polished banister. We were only trying to find you support. Find me a good lawyer, I said. That's how you can support me. He hesitated. A lawyer? For what? For the future you seem so eager to manage, I said. Since you're not interested in managing this conversation, I'll do it myself. I'll let you know who I hire. I set the phone down and leaned my forehead to the cool metal drawer of Daniel's tool chest. I could hear him in my head, that low laugh. Lou, don't let nobody rearrange your house while you're still in it. I wasn't about to. Before noon, a white van rolled up. Two men climbed out carrying the miter saw like a stretcher. Marcus trailed them, face closed, jaw working. Ma, you're making this harder than it has to be. I'm making it honest, I said and pointed to the pegboard. Put every piece back where it was. Wipe off your fingerprints when you're done. The men hid their smirks and did as they were told. Marcus stared at the concrete floor. We thought Daddy had debts maybe. Thought we could get ahead. Your father had pride, I said. And a wife he trusted. That's enough. After they left, I locked the garage and drove to a strip of offices off North Avenue where the lettering on the law firm's glass door said Iona B. Hayes, Escu. In a font that told you she didn't have to shout to be heard. The receptionist offered me lemon water and called her Miss Hayes like they were family. When Iona came out, Black blazer, flat shoes, hair in a twist bun that said she had court in an hour and somebody's mess to fix in 2. She shook my hand with a grip that steadied me all the way to my shoulder. "What brings you in, Miss Carter?" she asked once we sat in her office, which was neat but not fussy, diplomas lining the wall like proof. "My sons bring ideas to my pastor before they bring them to me," I said. "They brought movers to my garage before bringing condolences to my door. And they brought a notary into my kitchen 3 days after I buried my husband." I slid the standard authorization across her desk. "I need someone who will bring the law to them before they bring anything else to me." She read the document, her thumb running the margin. "Do you have any immediate vulnerabilities? Open lines of credit, joint accounts they can access?" "I keep a composition book," I said, and pulled it from my bag. "The cheap black and white kind you buy for first-grade spelling. What I don't have in here I remember. But I want this to be more than memory. I want it to be paper they can't crumple." Iona smiled, not the social smile, the satisfied one people wear when the thing in front of them matches the shape of the solution they carry. "We're going to tighten your house, Miss Carter. We'll put your primary assets in a revocable trust in your name. Freeze any home equity lines. Add a bank note that no countersigned checks are honored without you in person. Change the locks. Install a basic camera at the garage and front door. And," she tapped the authorization, "we'll send them a polite letter informing them that any further legal instruments related to your estate will go through my office. You'll be the one making decisions, not their signatures." "Will that make them mad?" I asked, and Iona's mouth twitched. "It will make them behave," she said. "Or it will make them sloppy. And sloppy is useful in court." We went line by line through my life. The mortgage, which was paid off. The utilities. My pension. The little annuity from the school system. We moved through it like women shelling peas. Steady, efficient, making a pile of something that would feed me later. When she asked about other assets, unnamed ones, things that might not be obvious, I felt Daniel's promise flare warm under my ribs. "I'll tell you when I need to," I said. She nodded once, as if we'd just drawn a boundary on a map neither of us planned to cross unless we had to. Back home, I taped Iona's card to the inside of a kitchen cabinet, next to the recipe for 7-layer salad my sister swears by. Then I stood in the garage doorway again and counted tools back onto hooks. I could hear the basketball down the block, the gossip 2 houses over, the city doing what it does, carrying on with your story or without it. I swept the concrete, turned off the light, and locked the door. It wasn't lost on me that my sons had gone to the one place where Daniel's hand still lived and tried to move it like inventory. If they could move my husband's tools, what else were they willing to move? I've always trusted paper more than memory. Memory is like Sunday hats, pretty, delicate, and blown sideways by an unexpected wind. Paper is a cast-iron skillet. It keeps heat, it keeps shape, and it can defend you if you need it to. So I bought 3 composition books with the black and white marbled covers that look like school beginnings and set one in the kitchen, one in my bedroom, and one in the garage. I wrote the date on the first page and started a habit. Time, who called, what they said, who was present, what was moved, what was promised. It wasn't just a record. It was a net. The locks got changed by noon. A young brother from around the way who didn't ask why I wanted a keypad that beeped complicated. He just installed it and tested it twice. I stood in the doorway while the security company technician walked me through the camera feed on my phone, front porch and garage view, motion alert set to persistent. I named the system Daniel's Eyes, because the app asked for a name and it felt like a small private rebellion to say my husband was still watching his home. I started carrying Iona's card like a talisman. I taped one more copy under the sugar canister lid. Petty. Maybe. Effective. Absolutely. Every time my hand reached for sweetness, the law looked back at me. By afternoon, Andre called. I could hear office hum behind him, the soft shuffle of paralegals, the printer grinding out other people's problems. "Mom," he began, gentle as a bedtime story. "I'm sorry if we rushed you. Marcus gets ahead of himself and I can be a little too proactive." I sat at the kitchen table with a composition book open, pen upright like a compass needle. "Proactive," I repeated, writing it down. "And what does proactive look like tomorrow?" "Tomorrow, it looks like me stopping by with some folders," he said. "Just information, probate timelines, checklists, that sort of thing. No signatures." "That would be fine," I said. "We can look at information. We are not signing anything." He exhaled. "I hear you." He lowered his voice the way he does when he wants to move me. "I want to protect you, Mom. Dad would want that." "I protected myself before you were tall enough to reach the stove," I said softly. "Let's use protect for the right things." 20 minutes later, Marcus knocked like the police. I didn't open right away. The camera caught him shifting foot to foot, pulling his cap down, looking street and 12 at the same time. When I did open, he barely waited on the threshold. "You changed the locks," he said. "Not a question." "I did," I said. "You'll get a code when we are behaving like family." His jaw went tight. "Ma, I can't stand all this process. We got bills coming due. The water bill. Insurance. Dad's medical." "Done," I said. "The pension covers what the savings don't. You don't need to worry the numbers you haven't seen." He looked past me, like the money might be visible if he angled his eyes right. "I know what's in the checking, Ma. It's not enough to." "How do you know what's in my checking?" "Yes." Silence. "The kind that falls heavy as a coat." He shrugged in that way men do when they want to pretend it's all a misunderstanding. "I saw the last statement on the counter when I was here." I wrote it down, saw bank statement, used it like a map. Then I looked him in the eye until his posture deflated just an inch. "No more peeking," I said. "If you want to know where things stand, you ask me. If I want to tell you, I will." He scratched his jaw, eyes flicking toward the mantel like maybe the lilies had wilted into cash. "It's just, you always handled things. You always made the numbers stretch. I thought. You thought if you moved first, you'd look like a savior," I said. "And if you moved fast enough, you wouldn't have to sit with what this feels like." He flinched. It landed. He left without slamming the door, which I counted as respect or exhaustion. I made a pot of tea and dialed the utility companies one by one, confirming account names, re-upping passwords, adding two-factor authentication because the technician had said the phrase like a prayer and I am nothing if not teachable. I called the bank, spoke to a woman named Teresa who sounded like my cousin, and placed verbal passwords on every account. "If anyone comes in asking about my balances, you call me," I said. "I don't care if they show up singing Jesus Loves Me and wearing a photo of my wedding in their wallet." "We will," she said, the kind of we that meant her and the other ladies who run the world from behind counters. By late afternoon, the house felt tighter, like a belt pulled in one notch after dinner. I wrote down the small victories. Password changed, beneficiary verified, lock beeped. It was steadying, this list of tiny shields. The next morning, Teresa from First Bank called me back. "Miss Carter," she said, voice careful. "Are you planning to stop by today?" "I wasn't," I said, my eyes already on the nearest composition book. "We have a flagged check here," she said. "Drawn on your husband's account. Was dated yesterday." My mind went cold and calm like a lake before a storm. "Miss Teresa," I said, My husband is not able to write checks, given that he is in the ground. Yes, ma'am. Her voice softened further. It's made out to cash. The system flagged the signature as inconsistent with previous samples. I asked the gentleman to wait a moment while I checked. He said he was your son. I grabbed my purse, the one with the good zipper and Iona's card already inside. Tell him I'm on my way. The bank lobby smelled like old paper and disinfectant. I walked in and there he was. Marcus, standing at the counter with his hat in his hand, that same boyish lostness I remembered from when he was 5 and broke Miss Tillman's window with a baseball. The difference now was the line he had crossed with intention. Ma, he started, hands out, as if to receive grace like a communion wafer. I was going to tell you. After you finished. Yes. My voice was not loud. I didn't need volume. Had gravity. Teresa slid the check back toward me like an apology. In the light you could see the ink drag where he'd tried to mimic the confident weight of Daniel's signature, and landed in a tremble. She leaned in, her words for me, but meant to be heard by anyone in earshot. He said he was your son, she whispered. He is, I said. And that's why I'm going to handle this instead of the police. Marcus blinked once, slow. Shame crawled up his neck like ivy. I messed up, he said. I saw that the account was still listed and I thought. It's ours, Ma. It's family money. Your father's name was on it, I said. And mine. Not yours. Family is not a magic key that opens every door. He put his hands on the counter, palms down like he might steady himself on the bank's laminate. I panicked. You don't tell us anything. You act like we're enemies. I'm acting like a mother who knows her children, I said. And you are acting like a man who wants to skip the work and hold the reward. That check was a shortcut. I don't raise shortcut men. I turned to Teresa. Please mark this account. No withdrawals, no teller access, no checks honored unless I am here in person with identification and my signature on the line. Yes, ma'am, she said, tapping her keyboard. I've also added a note that any attempts trigger a supervisor review and a call to you and your attorney. I hadn't told Teresa I had an attorney, but maybe desperation has a smell and Iona was the scent of the solution. Thank you, I said. On the way out, I told Marcus to walk with me. We stopped under the ginkgo tree that drops its leaves all at once like a golden carpet, though it hadn't turned yet. You're going to take this feeling you're having right now, I said, and let it teach you. Not to crawl. To stand up. Daniel did not build you to stand on my shoulders like a step stool. He nodded, jaw tight, eyes shiny the way men hate for their eyes to be. I'm sorry, he said. He meant it in the way a man means it when the consequences are real. That's a start, not a finish. Back home I wrote it all down. Bank, check, words said, faces made, promises given. Then I called Iona and told her the whole story like I was reading a recipe. She said, good. We put the note on the account and I'll send a letter to both your sons documenting that any attempt to access estate assets without authorization constitutes fraud. Invoice. Certified mail. That afternoon, Andre arrived with a stack of folders and a pie from Whole Foods, which is his version of making amends. He sat at my table and explained timelines and letters of administration and which forms the court wanted, all of it in a voice so soothing you could almost forget he was laying rails that led where he wanted to go. Then, softly, he pivoted. Do you need help with your passwords? He asked. Sometimes older. He stopped himself. Sometimes they can be tricky. I got them, I said. He smiled, and in that smile was a sadness I didn't recognize on him. Maybe realizing the oldest woman in your life doesn't need you the way you'd hoped is its own kind of grief. When he left, I locked the door, checked Daniel's eyes for the little green that meant the camera was watching, and sat with the composition book open in my lap. Every entry felt like a stitch. Little holes, tiny pricks. And then you pull the thread and the fabric strengthens. Men will tell you paper is nothing but a formality. Women who have outlived men know better. The teller slid the check back to me, whispering, "He said he was your son." 2 days after the bank incident, I woke before the alarm, the way you do when your spirit is keeping watch even after your body begs for rest. The house was quiet except for the refrigerator's low hum and a delivery truck sighing somewhere on Garrison Boulevard. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with my composition book open, the pen already warm from my hand. I had the sense, call it a mother's barometer, that the weather in my life was changing again. The email landed at 7:12 a.m. The subject line was friendly as a neighbor and slippery as a salesman. Quick inquiry re. Mother's out-of-state duplex. The sender used a Gmail with a name that didn't match the signature. Mel from Charm City Property Solutions. But the body was written like someone who knew how to wear a suit. Good morning, Mrs. Carter. I'm reaching out to see if you are interested in exploring options to liquidate or refinance an out-of-state residential property held in your name or beneficial interest. We specialize in expedited solutions for families navigating probate-related stress. If this is of interest, we can arrange a discreet consult. No obligation. Warm regards. I stared at the screen as if my glare could burn through to the sender. Out-of-state residential property held in your name or beneficial interest. It read like a fishing line cast into my kitchen. Curiosity is a cat. Suspicion is a guard dog. I let both sit at my feet while I read the email 3 more times. Then I forwarded it to myself, printed it, and slid the paper into a manila folder I had labeled odd. I added today's date and the time to the composition book and wrote the subject line in quotation marks like a warning label. I did not reply. Instead, I poured another cup of coffee and opened my laptop like I was opening a window to the street. The email signature had a phone number and a little link to a bare-bones website. Stock photos, vague promises, testimonials with first names only. The About page listed no team members, just a decade of experience and deep relationships with title and probate professionals. I copied the email address, dropped it into LinkedIn's search bar, and let the algorithm earn its keep. A profile popped up for a Melissa H. with a smile that looked like it had been practiced for wedding photos. Not much there except recent activity. She had liked a post from a boutique title firm downtown, and she had commented a heart on an engagement photo for a woman named Kennedy Ross. I clicked Kennedy's profile. Young, ambitious, the kind of bios that stack like building blocks. JD, community board, Pilates on Saturdays, tan line from a beach somewhere I could afford but didn't want. Her headline read, Associate at Whitfield and Ross LLP. My eyes lingered on the last name. As in Evan Ross, Andre's partner at the firm. The engagement photo was a rooftop shot. City lights behind them, her diamond doing the most. Kennedy's fiancé, tagged and grinning, was the same Evan I'd seen in suit jackets too slim for his shoulders, standing next to Andre at the firm's holiday party with a glass of champagne and a look that said he set prices, not clocks. I scrolled. Kennedy had posted last week. So excited to bring creative solutions to families in transition. Ask me about our probate concierge partners. She tagged 2 accounts. The title firm I'd just seen and Charm City Property Solutions. I clicked through to the title firm and there he was again. Evan giving a lunch and learn talk with Expedite, Bridge, and Unlock Liquidity splashed across a PowerPoint behind him like a blessing or a threat. I leaned back in my chair, the old wood giving a small groan. You don't live this long without learning to see shape under surface. Andre hadn't just been thinking like a son. He'd been thinking like a partner at a firm with friends who turn grief into billable hours. I wasn't naive enough to think he was sitting in his office plotting to strip me bare. But I wasn't foolish enough to ignore the point where family and professional convenience hold hands. I did not call him. Not yet. The difference between noise and evidence is time. I took a screenshot of everything. The email, the LinkedIn connections, the engagement post, the lunch and learn. And I printed those too, lining them up in my odd folder like suspects in a lineup. Then I called Iona. She answered on the second ring. Miss Carter. I received an email, I said. About liquidating an out-of-state duplex. She didn't ask which duplex. She didn't even breathe loud. Forward it to me, she said, and I heard her keyboard wake up. Do not respond. Do not hint that you saw it. We'll run the sender against public filings. See who owns the domain, who their registered agent is, if any. And Miss Carter, remind me, do your sons know anything about any out-of-state property? They do not, I said, and held my tongue on the urge to say they think they do. Good, she said. Let's keep it that way. After we hung up, the doorbell rang. Through Daniel's eyes I saw Andre on the porch, folders tucked under his arm, pie box in his hand like peace. I let him in because I am not raising a war in my own kitchen if I can help it. He sat, lined up his papers like bricks. Okay, he said. Housekeeping first. Here's the probate timeline. Here are the forms for letters of administration. You'll be the personal representative, of course. I can file them for you, or we can use an outside service, whatever makes you comfortable. He slid the pie toward me like a tip. Pecan. Thank you, I said, setting it aside. Let's start with comfortable. I hired an attorney. His eyelids flickered like a man who has a speck of dust suddenly sting. You did. I did, I said. Her name is Iona Hayes. From here on, legal goes through her. I watched the muscles in his jaw find their new job. You can still bring me information. But you'll copy her on anything you bring. He smiled a little too stretched. Of course. I just want to make this smoother for you. Smooth isn't always honest, I said. I like honest with a few bumps. He laughed, real surprised. It did something good in the room. Then he tipped his head, studying me. Mom, if there's anything out there I need to know about, debts, accounts, properties, it's better for me to be looped in now. We can preempt problems. What's out there is grief, I said. And some utility bills. The rest is mine to know for now. He nodded, but the nod had little roots of irritation in it. Okay. One more housekeeping item. Evan's fiancée, Kennedy. She does some concierge work on probate-adjacent matters. She might reach out with a courtesy note about vendors, estate sale folks, title companies. Just ignore if it's not helpful. That's considerate, I said. I'll ignore it. He winced, a pinch of embarrassment passing over his good features. I walked into that, he said, and we both smiled. The relief of naming the elephant without poking it. He left after an hour, promises to text, a promise from me to loop Iona in. When the door shut, I stood at the sink and watched a squirrel make a run across the fence line, tail high like a banner. I kept my face calm, but my insides were a taut violin string. The boys were sniffing. And not just in my kitchen. The rest of the day, I held my tongue like it was a fragile thing. Marcus called to ask if I wanted him to help sort the garage this weekend. I told him I'd let him know. Reverend left a voicemail reminding me that I had a right to slow this process even if others were anxious. The subtext was a benediction and a boundary for my sons. I hung fresh towels, the good ones, because sometimes you protect your peace by pretending life is ordinary. Just before dinner, Iona called back. Got a hit, she said. The domain for Charm City Property Solutions is owned through a cheap registrar. The phone number routes to a co-working space downtown. One of the listed partners is engaged to an Evan Ross. That name ring a bell? It does, I said. Nothing illegal about any of that, she added. But when grief becomes a pipeline to transaction, we say so out loud. What's our move? Yes. Our move is no move, she said. We sit. We collect. We let them show us their appetite. If any paperwork about a property arrives at your door, something you never disclosed, call me. We'll respond with a formal notice. You are represented. All future contact to this office. Cease any attempts to solicit transaction of unknown assets. Voice. Big teeth. I set the phone down and put my palms flat on the counter. I could feel the house under me like a ship, firm on the water even with sails snapping above. Daniel would have said, sand in circles, Lou. Take the scratchy edge down without losing the shape. I wasn't going to tip my hand. Not about Florida, not about gold. Not about the bank account that existed with only my name on it like a secret door in a familiar house. At 9, the neighborhood was settling. Someone's TV carried a laugh track through a cracked window. Margot called to say she liked the smell of my fabric softener. I wrote in my book, email inquiry re. Mother's out-of-state duplex. Connections. Kennedy. Evan, Andre. No response. Counsel informed. I went to bed without touching the red folder in the cedar chest. The promise I made to Daniel wasn't just about keeping quiet. It was about seeing clearly. My sons weren't villains. They were men, and men can be tempted by paths that pay them for speed. I had to leave enough road between us for them to show their gait. I turned off the lamp. The house exhaled. Somewhere a siren sounded, then faded, then nothing but the smallness of my own breath. I thought about water, about the other house where the air always smells faintly of salt and sunscreen, about the tenants who send their rent on time and do not know my sons' names. I thought about coins as heavy as trust, stacked in a box like the quietest of promises. I thought about my husband's underlined word, protect, cut into the page. They were sniffing at doors they didn't even know existed. Reverend Brooks called it a family check-in, the way people call a storm a shower when they don't want to scare the children. Miss Lou, if you're up to it, could you come by the office tomorrow at 2? He asked, voice careful. The boys would like to talk through some concerns. I'm up to it, I said. I've been up to harder things than a meeting in a church office with a box of tissues and a framed scripture on the wall. The afternoon light through the stained glass windows made the carpet look like spilled candy. Reverend's office always smells like old books and lemon oil. He stood when I came in, that hand on my elbow Southern men use when they want to be helpful without admitting they're afraid you might fall. Andre and Marcus were already seated. Andre in a chair angled toward the Reverend, Marcus perched on the edge of the sofa like a spring that hadn't decided which direction to snap. Thank you for coming, Mama, Andre said, first syllable sweetened like he was back at my kitchen table asking for seconds of peach cobbler. There was a manila folder on his lap, the same brand as mine, only his didn't have grief in it. His had strategy. I set my purse down, crossed my legs, and placed my composition book on the arm of my chair, open. Clicked my pen. It made a tiny sound that still managed to shift the room. Reverend cleared his throat. We all love Sister Louise, he began, the cadence of Sunday softening his consonants. We want to ensure she has every support she needs. Your father's passing is a great burden to carry. Say what you came to say, I told my sons because I did not need padding today. Andre inhaled, exhaled, and opened the folder. We've been talking with some folks who specialize in elder care, best practices, protections, that sort of thing. He glanced at Reverend, witness, shield, cosigner. Given the recent incidents, checks, moving items, confusion about titles, we think it's sensible to put some temporary structures in place. Only to protect you, Mama. Marcus shifted, then stilled. He wasn't leading, which told me he wanted this but didn't know how to sell it. What structures? I asked, though the answer had already walked into the room with them. Andre slid a document across the coffee table, the paper making a whispering sound, as if it knew it should be quiet in church. This is a petition for a limited guardianship, he said. Short term. You keep your dignity and autonomy. We just help with financial decisions until the estate settles. It prevents any predators from taking advantage while you're grieving. I lifted the first page. Courthouse seal. The language. The way my name looked printed under allegations I had not agreed to. Words like diminished capacity and best interests and oversight. The kind of legalese that wraps itself around your ankles and calls it a blanket. Reverend spoke softly. These processes can be a blessing if used rightly. Blessings don't come with handcuffs, I said, not moving my eyes from the page. I set it down and folded my hands over my knee to keep them from shaking. Calm has a body temperature and mine dropped to meet it. Mom, Andre said, gentle, coaxing. We don't want to control you. We want to make sure no one else does. I looked up then, slow. No one else, I repeated. Except you. He flinched like I'd flicked water in his face. Marcus leaned forward. It ain't like that, Ma. Just, paperwork moves slow. Folks get slick. We want to be able to act fast if someone tries you. Someone already tried me, I said, keeping my voice level so my words could carry their own weight. At the bank. With a check. He said he was my son. Marcus's eyes dropped. I didn't need to say his name. Shame did the work for me. Andre straightened, lawyer posture kicking in. That's exactly why this is prudent, he said. It streamlines decisions. It protects you. They wanted to protect me by owning me. I didn't say it out loud. I let it march through my head, plant a flag and sit down. I turned to Reverend. With respect, Pastor, I will not be discussed like a program in this office. I am not the benevolence fund. He held my gaze. He is a good man. Not perfect, not a prophet, but good. I hear you, Sister Louise, he said, voice lower. And I need to say out loud that you have not shown me one sign of incompetence. Grief is not confusion. It is grief. Thank you, I said. Now let me say out loud what I came to say. Faced my sons. I've seen them newborn and bloody. I have seen them fall off bikes and skin knees wide open. I have stood between them and a world that does not love black boys. I have written checks to keep lights on and gone without so they could have cleats, class trips, a prom tux never returned on time. I tapped the petition with my fingertip. You don't get to raise me after I raised you, I said. Mama, Andre began. No, I said, not louder, just firmer. You do not get to call my strength confusion because it is not convenient for your timeline. You do not get to name control care. Because you dressed it in soft words. You do not get to bring the law against me when I brought you into this world. Marcus dragged a hand down his face. Ma, that's not what. I held up a palm. I will talk. You will listen. Then you will decide who you want to be. I leaned in, elbows on my knees, the way I used to when I sat on the edge of their beds and told them the truth after a lie. I have an attorney. Her name is Iona Hayes. Anything legal goes through her. If either of you files anything in a court about my capacity or control over my finances, she will respond in full. I've already had my doctor document my cognitive health. I am not playing with you about that. I softened my voice by a half-inch. I know you are scared. Am I? But fear is not a license. Andre looked stricken, pride bruised, love searching for a place to sit. We wanted to make sure you weren't overwhelmed, he said, small now. I have been overwhelmed since Richard Nixon was in office, I said dry, and even Reverend chuckled, a quick bark like relief. It did not kill me then. It will not kill me now. Silence held for a count of 10. The light through the window had slid to a different patch of carpet. Someone down the hall was practicing a hymn, the piano tentative, then sure. Reverend cleared his throat again. Brothers, he said, and his tone shifted from pastor to father. You are not your mother's owner. You are her son's. I will pray with you for wisdom. I cannot sign off on this petition. If you ask me to appear, I will tell the truth I know. Andre swallowed hard and nodded. Understood. Marcus looked at me and, for the first time in weeks, I saw just my boy. Not my problem, not my opponent. My boy. I'm sorry, Ma, he muttered. We moved too quick. Then slow down, I said. And show up. Come fix the loose stair on the back porch that your father kept saying he'd get to and didn't. Take the trash out on Thursdays without me asking. Sit and eat with me without bringing a folder. That is how you protect me. The air in the room changed. Like a window opened we hadn't noticed was shut. Andre closed the folder. He didn't push it back toward me. Small mercies. We stood. Reverend prayed, simple words, no theatrics. Lord, give us patience, truth, and the kind of love that doesn't have to hold the reins to feel strong. Amen. When he finished, he pressed my hand, then pressed each of theirs like he was sealing something invisible. In the parking lot, Andre touched my elbow. I overstepped, he said. I thought I was being a good son. You are a good son, I said. Be a better man. Marcus hugged me, chin digging into my shoulder like when he was 12 and still half my height. You cooking Sunday? He asked, muffled. I am, I said. If you come, you eat. If you bring papers, you eat on the porch. He laughed, a quick real sound, and let me go. At home, I set my purse on the counter and took out the composition book. I wrote, Guardianship petition presented at church. Refused. Reverend declined to support. Sons chastened for now. Doctor capacity letter Iona to file. Then I stuck a yellow post-it on the page and wrote in block letters the same way Daniel did when he wanted to make sure I didn't miss his meaning. Watch. I made tea and sat in Daniel's chair. The house creaked in the afternoon heat. I could feel that they loved me. I could also feel how love and control share a border if you don't keep a fence between them. I would be the fence. Not barbed wire. White picket. Cute from the street. Strong enough to keep what matters in and what threatens out. They wanted to protect me by owning me. Iona doesn't waste words. She uses them like a seamstress uses pins. Sharp, necessary, holding fabric in place until the real stitches go in. I sat across from her again, the blinds in her office casting tidy stripes across the floor. The air smelled faintly of coffee and dry ink. She had my composition book open between us, like a third party to the conversation, a witness with good memory. We're going to build 3 layers, she said, drawing boxes on a legal pad. Lockdowns, trusts, and proof. Lockdowns first. Freeze anything with a lever your sons could pull, intentionally or not. I changed the locks, the passwords, put notes on the bank accounts, I said. We add to that, she replied. We record a notice of intent to create a living trust for your primary residence. The deed will move into your revocable trust as soon as the paperwork clears. That pulls it out of easy reach. No more let's list the house decisions without you as trustee allowing it. We file a memorandum with the court that you are represented and that all probate-adjacent communications must go through this office. We also add a formal bank instruction. No phone request changes to accounts. In person only, 2 forms of ID, and a supervisor sign-off. She ticked them off as if she were counting rosary beads. Soothe me. Will that look like I don't trust my sons? Asked, hearing my own voice test for softness. It will look like you protect your estate, she said. That is your duty as personal representative and as the woman Daniel trusted. The way she said his name, without asking who he was, told me she knew more about me than the facts I'd handed her. She understood marriage like a contract and a covenant. Okay, I said, which has been the hardest word and the easiest since I became a widow. What next? Trusts, she said, and drew the second box. We draft a revocable living trust for you. Louise Carter, trustee. It holds the house, your non-retirement investment accounts, and any property you choose to place into it now or later. You retain control while you're alive. On incapacity or death, your designated successor trustee steps in. Pause. We will not name either son as successor right now. My breath caught on that. It wasn't that I didn't see the sense. It was that seeing the sense meant admitting something about my boys I didn't want to write in pen. Then who? We can name a professional fiduciary or a trusted friend, she said. Or, if you like, I will serve temporarily until you select someone else. You can change it later. Temporary, I repeated, as if saying it softened the truth. For them, she said. Not for you. And the third layer, proof. Yes. She lifted a folder I hadn't noticed. I spoke with your primary care physician. He's prepared to sign a capacity letter after a brief evaluation. We'll videotape your reading of a prepared statement. Simple. Name, date, address, why you chose to create a trust, that you understand and consent. We'll notarize it. We keep originals in my office, copies with you. He sat back. If anyone files a petition questioning your capacity or tries to imply undue influence, we drop proof. Only. Clinically. Paper beats panic. I let the quiet settle, the way you let cake rest before you frost it so it won't tear. This feels like a war, I said. It's a boundary, she said, gentle now. People who want your soft parts will tell you a boundary is an attack. It isn't. It's a fence. Pretty from the street, sturdy at the posts. I nodded because I liked when other people spoke my metaphors. It reminded me I hadn't lost the parts of me Daniel used to mirror back. We went through the forms, me initialing boxes, signing my name until the letters looked almost like someone else's handwriting. She slid a separate packet toward me. This is optional, but I recommend it. A limited power of attorney designating me for specific legal matters related to the trust transfer, and a healthcare directive that names who you want making medical decisions if you can't. My sister Clara, I said. She's pushy, but she loves me without an agenda. Anna smiled. Pushy without an agenda is precisely who you want in an ER. When we finished, she capped her pen and leaned back. Now, she said, we talk about the boys. Sat up. I don't want to punish them, I said, the words quick out of me. I feel that desire sit up in my chest some days, I won't lie. But Daniel. I stopped and looked at the window, the drawn blinds, the steady light. He underlined protect, not punish. Good, Iona said. Then we design the shadow plan, the one you don't have to tell them. The trust will include a sub-trust provision. If after a set period you decide to bless them financially, it will not be a lump sum. We structure a discretionary trust with conditions you select. Matched earnings, mandatory counseling, debt management programs, sobriety verification if relevant. If relevant, I echoed. thinking of Marcus at the bank window and the way panic rides a man. And for Andre. For Andre, she said carefully, we design a conflict of interest firewall. If he is practicing law at the time of any distribution, he cannot serve as trustee, cannot represent any party to the trust, and must sign a disclosure that he is not to advise you or his brother on matters that benefit him or his firm. It's not an insult. It's a seatbelt. I saw him in my mind's eye. My eldest with his tie and his folders and his good intentions that travel with sharp friends. He will take that as an insult, I said. He can take it as love, she said. If he chooses to. We scheduled the doctor, the notary. The videographer Iona keeps in her roster for exactly these quiet wars. When I stood to leave, she didn't walk me to the door right away. She rested her elbows on the desk and looked at me as if the next question had weight she respected. Miss Carter, she said, is there anything else? The room grew smaller. The air moved closer to my skin. There are questions you walk around your whole life, and then one day you sit down in a chair across from a woman who knows the shape of them and she asks, and you realize you are tired of walking. My promise to Daniel didn't forbid me from telling my attorney. It asked me to be wise about when. I felt his hand on mine the night before he died, that squeeze that pinched bone and oath together. Yes, I said. My voice was quiet and it filled the room anyway. There is. I told her about the red folder in the cedar chest. About the safe deposit box key taped under the lining. About the inventory list in Daniel's block letters. American Eagles, Krugerrands, one by one, dates and weights like a hymn. About the Florida duplex, how we bought it with cash and sweat, titled in a land trust that hid our names, rented to a nurse and her brother who keep the porch swept and the gutters clear. About the bank account in my name alone, the one Daniel called my lifeline, funded not to dangle in front of the boys but to catch me if I fell. Iona did not blink at gold. She did not blink at Florida. She did not blink at the word secret. This is why I hired a black woman to guard my life. She knew secrets are not sins. Sometimes they are survival. We will not move those assets, she said. Not yet. We will document them privately and keep their titles clean. If anyone attempts fraud or coercion, they trigger your emergency protocol. We move the duplex into your revocable trust. We relocate the safe deposit contents to a second institution with dual verification. And we shift a portion of the lifeline into a separate account with an anonymous mailing address that routes to this office. It sounds like hiding, I said, and then I heard my own righteousness and set it down gently. It sounds like protecting, she said, and I believed her because Daniel would have said the same. Driving home, I thought about the difference between punishment and protection. Punishment wants to see someone hurt so you will feel less alone. Protection wants to see someone live, even if they never thank you for it. The first opens your hand to slap. The second opens your hand to cover. I could feel both living under my ribs, pacing. I cracked the window so the city air could argue with me and win. Back at the house, I took out the red folder. My hands shook, but they didn't hesitate. I spread everything on the table. Ledger pages with Daniel's neat notes, the rubber-banded inventory, the photocopied deed for the Daytona duplex with a land trust name that meant nothing and everything. I slid the folder's contents into new plastic sleeves, labeled them in my own handwriting, and made a second copy of the inventory to give Iona. Then I put it all back, just as Daniel had left it, only now it was not a secret between husband and wife. It was a plan between a widow and her lawyer. That night I couldn't sleep. The house had the empty echo of a church after the last congregant leaves. I made tea and walked the rooms Daniel built with his hands. Patched drywall, straightened cabinet doors, the floorboards he pulled and relayed when the city still smelled like fresh hope after rain. I pressed my palm to the cedar chest and felt the thrum of my own pulse under wood. My boys were not wolves. But they were hungry, and the world had taught them to eat fast. I would teach them to eat right. Iona asked, "Is there anything else?" I opened Daniel's last door. I waited until Sunday afternoon, after church and after the line of hugs that felt like both medicine and bruises, to open the red folder in daylight. The house was quiet except for the distant thump of a basketball and a train far off dragging its metal hymn across the city. I set the folder on the kitchen table like it was a fragile heirloom, not paper and keys and a ledger in Daniel's square handwriting. I pulled my reading glasses down my nose, clicked my pen, and made my kitchen a courtroom with no jury but me. The first thing out was the safe deposit key, taped under the cardboard lip with blue painter's tape, the exact shade Daniel used for edges when he didn't trust his hand not to wander. I peeled it slow, careful not to bend the metal like I could bend fate. The ledger followed, pages softened by his thumbprints, each coin entry a confession of time. American Eagle, 1 ounce, purchased cash, date. Krugerrand, 1 ounce, swap for timber job, date. In the margins he had scribbled small notes in the way a man talks to himself when he doesn't have to perform for anyone. Hold this for Lou, don't ever sell all at once. Not to punish. To protect. I said the words out loud. Not to punish, to protect, and they changed shape in my mouth. The first time I read them, I felt like a judge turning down a sentence. This time, I felt like a mother putting a hand on a child's chest and saying, "Breathe." Under the ledger lay the photocopy of the Florida deed. The land trust name forgettable on purpose. Trusteeship signed by a lawyer we'd met in a strip mall next to a Cuban bakery where the café con leche could make a sinner testify. I traced the legal description with my finger like a prayer, beginning at the northeast corner of Lot 12, words that meant the place where our porch caught morning sun and where the tenants kept a broom and a plant on the steps because they were grateful, because they understood stewardship without us having to teach it. The bank letter was last, rubber-banded and thick. Statements showing deposits from rent and the occasional transfer from Daniel's side jobs, all into an account that read Louise M. Carter, sole owner. He had written one more note on a sticky. Emergency and dignity. Nothing flashy. Use it to say no with a straight back. I sat there with the paper in front of me and the weight of choices heavy as nickels in a childhood pocket. My sons had shown me the outlines of their fear and their appetite. Andre with his polished plans, eager to flatten complexity into efficiency that he could manage. Marcus with his panic, grabbing first and apologizing second. I could see the boys in the men and I could see the men in the boys. Love makes you tilt toward mercy. Survival makes you tilt toward strategy. I needed both to stand upright. So I reframed the whole matter in a language they could learn, and I could live with. Stewardship. Daniel used to say, "You don't own a thing you don't care for. You just possess it until it rots." Money, property, the tools in his garage, the watch he wore on Sundays. None of it meant what it should if the hands holding it couldn't keep time with a conscience. I took a fresh sheet from my composition book and wrote at the top, "Legacy plan, stewardship, not spoils." Then I made 3 columns. Resource, purpose, conditions. Under resource I wrote, House on Whitfield Avenue. Purpose. Sanctuary, equity, memory. Conditions. Remains in trust during my lifetime. After passes into a family trust that allows occupancy to grandchildren, not sale for quick cash. Under that I wrote, Daytona Duplex. Purpose. Income and respite. Conditions. Held in land trust until and unless grandkids need tuition or a medical emergency. Any sale requires unanimous trustee consent plus a letter from a neutral financial counselor stating sale is prudent. Then, coins, gold. Purpose. Emergency liquidity, intergenerational seed, leverage, not enabling. Conditions. Never liquidate more than 10% in a 12-month period. Any release tied to matched earnings or verifiable need with receipts. I stared at the word leverage and crossed it out. Not a threat, a tool, I wrote. Levers move loads with less strain. Depends on who's pulling and why. Next, I wrote the conditions for Andre and Marcus. And the writing hurt in the way a necessary stretch hurts. For Andre, disclosure firewall. Cannot serve as trustee while practicing at a firm that profits from probate, title, or real estate transactions. Must complete a pro bono clinic on elder law and present to the church seniors group on avoiding exploitation. For Marcus, financial counseling and debt plan with receipts. No access to lump sums. Any distributions paid directly to creditors. Attend 6 months of counseling to deal with grief and panic responses. Bring me documentation, not apologies. I could hear Daniel fussing, loving, not scolding, about fairness and equity. So I made a note to myself. Explain the difference to them. Fair does not always mean equal. Equity means each gets what he needs to stand without leaning on the other or on me. At dusk, the house went that blue it gets in Baltimore. The twilight color that makes row homes look like a stage set. Streets both intimate and endless. I set the red folder back in the cedar chest, laid my hand on the lid, and felt the old wood's cool smoothness calm my nerves. I was not going to wield this like a sword. I was going to plant it like a fence post. Monday morning, I took a bus to the credit union across town where no teller knew my birthday by heart. I asked for a manager, showed ID, and requested to access the safe deposit box. The room was small, clean, and quiet in the way banks are quiet. Money's church with whispering parishioners. The attendant slid open a drawer like a morgue's. I signed the ledger, key turning in a lock that sounded too loud to my ears. Inside the box. Exactly what Daniel had listed. Tubes and sleeves. Their weight promising and terrible. I didn't remove them. Instead, I did what he'd written. I updated the inventory, initialed each line, and added a second key to my chain. The new box at a different institution Iona had set up. I closed the lid, signed again, and walked out feeling like I had lifted something and also set something down. On the way home, I stopped by the Florida duplex in my mind the way some folks stop by a grave, letting memory loop the scenes. Daniel in a faded Orioles cap, his brown hands white with drywall dust, cussing in soft church words when the stud wasn't plumb. Me on the porch swing with a paper cup of coffee, sun knitting freckles into my forearms. The nurse tenant bringing empanadas because her auntie said food blesses labor. That place wasn't just equity. It was proof we could build somewhere other than where we were born and still be ourselves. Back in my kitchen, I called Iona. I want to draft letters to both boys, I said. Not the kind that start wars. The kind that build roads. I want to tell them we are moving the house into a trust for my lifetime and that this is not a punishment but a plan. I want to tell them there is a path to access. Clear, fair, slow. And I want to tell them I'm not discussing Florida or anything else beyond Baltimore until they can sit at my table without bringing me a form. Iona listened, her silence the good kind. We can do that, she said. We'll call them stewardship agreements. They won't be legally binding like the trust documents, but they will put your expectations in black and white. Paper teaches. And if they balk, yes, then they teach you who they are right now, she said. And you adjust the lesson. I wrote that down. They teach me who they are. I adjust the lesson. The older I get, the more I understand most of motherhood is that sentence. Before bed, I stood in the doorway to the garage and let the light spill onto Daniel's bench. I picked up his measuring tape, pulled it to 12 inches and let it snap back. I thought about time. How Daniel measured twice and cut once. How he'd wait an extra day to lay stain so it would cure right. How he said rushing is just a mess in a faster suit. I would test their love the way Daniel tested time, with patience. I turned off the light, locked the door, and went to bed with my palms open, just in case God had something to put into them or take out. I set the table like it was a holiday, because sometimes strategy needs ceremony. The good plates with the thin gold rims. Cloth napkins I only iron for weddings, funerals, and wars. Grits the way they liked when their legs were still dimpled. Slow cooked with butter and a whisper of sharp cheddar. Scrambled eggs soft, bacon crisp. Biscuits split with steam curling up like the Holy Ghost. I brewed coffee strong enough to fix a weekday. Between the salt and pepper, I placed 2 envelopes with their names in my neat teacher script. Under Marcus. They arrived 15 minutes apart like always. Andre on time, tie loosened, the kind of cologne that says, meeting at 9. Marcus late, cap low, shoulders set in that ready-for-impact angle I know too well. They sat, glanced at the envelopes, then at each other. The kitchen smelled like comfort. The room felt like court. We're eating first, I said. Then we're talking. They ate because food tells truth when mouths won't. The quiet clink of forks. The soft noises men make when a memory sits down in their throat. By the time we sopped the last of the gravy with the last of the biscuit, the edge had sanded down just enough. I pushed the envelopes toward them. Open. Paper has its own weather. As they slipped the letters out, I felt a breeze of what might be relief or might be the opposite. Inside each, a cover letter in my words, typed by Iona, and a 2-page stewardship agreement, same in both, with blanks for signatures that weren't required but were invited. No legal trap, just moral architecture. I started before they could turn defensive into oxygen. This is not a punishment, I said. It is a plan. Andre scanned like a man who reads contracts for a living. Marcus looked from line to line like each sentence might jump. I watched their faces the way a cardiologist watches a monitor. House goes into your revocable living trust for your lifetime, Andre read aloud. Successor trustee to be designated later. Distributions to sons via discretionary subtrusts, contingent on matched earnings and participation in counseling and debt management plans. He glanced up. Matched earnings. If you earn $1 legally, prove it and keep your nose clean, your trust will match that dollar, I said. Not in cash. In tuition, mortgage principal. Seed money directly to a vendor. Not to your hand. To your future. The match is capped each year. Build slow. Marcus snorted, incredulous. So I gotta get permission to use my own inheritance. You do not have an inheritance, I said, not unkind, just true. You have a mother who is alive. What you have is access I choose to provide while I'm on this side of the ground. When I go, you will have whatever I say you have, and that will still come with conditions. Because I love you more than I love being liked by you. Andre swallowed. He had reached the bullet points labeled conditions for access. Counseling, he said, a question without a question mark. Yes, I said. 6 months. Grief, financial, whatever a licensed counselor says you need. You will bring me verification. Marcus, you will also bring me a debt plan. We will not throw good money at holes you won't stop digging. Marcus's chair scraped. He stood, hands balled in fists at his sides. This is humiliating. Better humiliated than homeless, I said. Sit down. He didn't, so I stood too. We are the same height when I'm wearing my Sunday shoes. Son, I said quietly. You stood at a bank counter with a check you forged and said my name to a stranger. You brought men to your father's garage with a key I did not give. You brought a notary into my kitchen like a magician pulling scarves from his sleeve. If anyone in this room knows humiliation, it's me. Sit down. He sat. Rage is a tide. You don't argue with it. You let it go out and count what it leaves behind. Andre kept reading, his voice steadying as if the work of saying the words aloud tethered him. Triggers, he said, tapping the section header. Any attempt to coerce, file guardianship, falsify signatures, or transact estate assets without trustee authorization triggers an immediate lock on all distributions for a minimum of 12 months. Attempts to circumvent these conditions through third parties, attorneys, realtors, concierge services, will be treated as direct attempts. He raised his eyes. You wrote concierge. I did, I said. I've met your friend Evan's fiancée. On the internet. She can sit down too. A flush rose on his cheeks that wasn't entirely shame. I told you I would walk that back. You cannot walk back what has already shown me your stride, I said. You can only change where you walk next. He read the last section. Pathways to Grace. His voice softened. After 6 months of compliance, extraordinary needs will be considered. Health, housing stability, education. Requests must be made in person with documentation. Decisions are final. That's the part you wrote the way I talk, I said. I want you to hear me even when some future trustee reads it to you. Marcus threw his letter on the table. So this is it. You dangling our own blood over us to make us jump through hoops. You're punishing us because Dad trusted you more. Breathe slow. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 6. My doctor's voice in my head. My own mother's voice under it. I placed my palm flat on the table. I am protecting you because your father trusted me more. Andre blinked. His eyes had the shine of a child who thinks he might cry and hopes he won't. Protecting us from what, Mom? From the worst parts of yourselves, I said simply. From the way grief can turn to greed and call itself efficiency. From the way panic can dress up as urgency and rob your future to pay your fear. From a world that cannot wait to separate black men from their legacy with a form and a pen. No one spoke. The fridge hummed. A car rolled by with bass low and polite. The house felt like a lung holding air. I'll do the counseling, Andre said first, surprising himself with how quickly it came out. And I'll sign this. I don't want my job to make me a bad son. It won't, I said. But you'll help that happen by choosing slow over slick. He nodded, a real nod like a seed agreeing with rain. Marcus laughed once, short and sharp. I don't need therapy, Ma. I need money. What you need, I said, is someone to hold a mirror steady while you look. Money can't do that. A counselor can. He shook his head, stood again, paced to the sink and back, the way men move when their skin doesn't fit. This is crazy, he said. You telling me to be a man and putting me on an allowance like a kid. I'm telling you to be a man by doing the work a man does, I said. Men ask for help without shame. Men tell the truth when they mess up. Men don't turn their mother into an ATM because the world told them women are machines. Andre put his hand out toward his brother. Marcus, sit. Just hear her. Marcus's mouth worked. The fury had begun to leak at the edges, and what showed under it was familiar. The boy who wanted me to fix it, the man who couldn't bear that I wouldn't. He sat. He picked up the letter again, eyes skimming like maybe the words had rearranged themselves into mercy while he paced. What if I don't sign? He asked. Then nothing changes except you on paper, I said. The trust moves forward. The house transfers. Lock stay. The love stays. The conditions hold whether you sign or not. So what's the point of signing? He snapped. The point, I said, is that you practice choosing the right thing before the right thing forces itself on you. He swallowed. I watched his throat work like a man trying to get water down around a stone. Andre slid his signed copy back to me, the pen strokes clear. "I'm in," he said. "I'll schedule counseling this week. I'll email Iona the name of someone who is not connected to our firm," he added, pointed, penitent. I took his paper and laid it to the side. I turned to Marcus. "You don't have to be ready today," I said. "Read it again tonight. Tomorrow. Bring it back when you can sit here without trying to barter." He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw my mother's chin in his face, my grandfather's stubborn in his set mouth. "Did Dad make you promise this?" he asked. "Dad made me promise to watch," I said. "And then decide. This is my decision." He nodded once, sharp. "I'll think about it." "That's all I asked," I said. They stood to leave. I packed biscuits in foil because motherhood is muscle memory. At the door, Andre hugged me like a man who knows he is held up by more than his own spine. Marcus hugged me quick, hard, like he wanted to break something and decided against it. When the door shut, I sat at the table with the empty plates and the signed paper and the unsigned one. The coffee had gone cold. I didn't mind. I wrote in my composition book, "Breakfast. Envelopes." Andre signed. Marcus stormed, then softened. Conditions stated. Triggers explained. I underlined triggers twice. I realized as I capped my pen that they hadn't come for breakfast. Not really. They had come for permission to keep doing what felt easiest to them, and I had refused. They didn't want a mother. They wanted a signature. The trick to keeping your house is learning which doors to lock and which windows to open so people think they're getting air. After breakfast, after Andre's signature and Marcus's storm, I turned to the thing nobody knew to name out loud. Florida. You can't defend a secret by shouting. You defend it by making its paper thicker than anyone's curiosity. Iona had already lined up what she called a quiet relay. First leg. A Florida counsel she trusted. Black woman, board certified in real estate. Office in a small Daytona plaza with a palm tree that leans like it's listening. We didn't put my name on anything new. We didn't light flares. We drafted a trustee acceptance for the land trust that held the duplex, replacing the placeholder trustee with an entity Iona used for clients who wanted discretion. Not a shell. Shield. The beneficiary designation, me, stayed where Daniel set it, in a separate private schedule that never leaves the locked drawer unless a judge with a straight face asks for it. Second leg. A memorandum of beneficial interest recorded quietly in the county records, bland as oatmeal, exact as scripture, stating that any conveyance of the property requires unanimous trustee consent plus a certification that the transfer complies with internal trust policies. Those policies, tucked in the trust binder nobody but us had, included one requirement: no sale without a written opinion from an independent financial counselor that liquidation is prudent for the beneficiary's long-term stability. No counselor with a business card and a conscience was going to write that letter for a widow who wasn't drowning. Third leg. Title fortification. Our Florida counsel ordered a courtesy title search to confirm the chain was clean. We placed a soft hold with the title company. Any inquiry about that parcel pinged her office and Iona's. Not a block, just a bell. I didn't answer Florida with trumpets. I answered with rules. The same week, as if a fishing line had tugged a second time, came another email. Hi Louise. Following up on our probate concierge services. I wanted to see if you'd like a no-pressure chat about the out-of-state property. We can help you unlock liquidity and reduce stress. A link to schedule sat there like a spider web in sunlight. I let it gleam. I did not touch it. Then a voicemail from a number with a beach exchange. Mrs. Carter, this is Steve with Suncoast Realty. We heard there may be interest in marketing a duplex on Daytona Street. We've got cash buyers who love, he paused, the sound of riffling paper. Value-add opportunities. Call me back. I didn't. I forwarded it to Iona with no comment. She replied within 10 minutes. Noted. Do not engage. 2 days later, Andre texted. Kennedy says you may get outreach from a Florida agent. Ignore, I'm shutting that down. I stared at the message, thinking about the future tense of a thing that already happened, thinking about the difference between shutting down and wiping fingerprints. I typed back, thank you for the heads up. Legal is handling all inquiries. Then I set the phone face down so I wouldn't throw it. Iona called that afternoon. Your bells rang, she said. Same circle. The realtor is connected to a wholesaler tied to the concierge service. I sent a cease contact letter. You are contacting a represented party. All future communications to counsel. Any attempt to solicit a sale of undisclosed assets will be treated as interference with a trust relationship. A pause. Calm voice. Teeth. What did they say? Asked. Nothing, she said. Which is what we want. At night, when the house went narrow with shadow and Daniel's chair looked like an absence you could trip over, I pulled the Florida binder out and read it like a novel. The legal description, the trustee acceptance, the policies we wrote in the sterile language that makes truth hold up in fluorescent light. Every clause was a fence post. Every definition was a rail. I slid it back onto the shelf between my cookbooks, Joy of Cooking Jubilee, because if anything belonged among recipes, it was this: how to keep something alive by feeding it right. On Thursday, the tenants texted me a photo of the porch, the little rubber mat they bought that said Bienvenidos/welcome, a pot of geraniums leaning toward the sun. Mr. Daniel used to fix the screen when it popped out, the nurse wrote. We miss him. They see is making a noise, buzz, then stop. Not urgent. Just letting you know. I sent the repairman we've used since the first summer, tipped him extra, and told him to leave his card under the mat. Later he sent me a video of the condenser, its fins clean, the unit humming easy after he tightened a loose contactor. That sound, smooth function, felt like prayer. Meanwhile the emails kept coming. A second agent with more pep in her punctuation. A We Buy Houses cash firm that wrote like a text message. A polite man from a title company, offering to start prelims to speed your closing when you're ready. I let their emails pile up like leaves I had already swept. I made a folder called Noise. I watched it swell. In Baltimore, I moved like a woman whose pockets did not jingle. I took the bus to the market, chatted with Mrs. Wilson about her arthritis and collards, carried my tote like I always have. I nodded at the young men on the corner like they were kings who just hadn't found their thrones yet. I baked a sweet potato pie and took 2 slices to Reverend and his wife because sometimes you feed the man who tells your son's truth to keep him strong. Marcus came by Saturday under the flimsy pretense of helping with a leaky faucet. He squatted under the sink like he used to do as a boy, head halfway into the cabinet like a turtle. This isn't my lane, he said, fiddling with the shutoff valve. Dad would know what to do. YouTube will too, I said, handing him a wrench. He laughed, then sobered. I read your paper again, he said, voice muffled by wood and pipe. It made me mad less. That's progress, I said. Mad less is the first step before see more. He slid out, lay flat on his back, looked up at the ceiling like it held answers. You really not gonna tell us if there's other stuff? I'm really going to let you earn the right to know, I said. He closed his eyes, nodded, and tightened the nut with more care than muscle. I called a counselor, he said, barely louder than the drip. He's got an opening Tuesday. Exhaled slow. Good. He slid back under, voice small in the cabinet's echo. You know what's crazy? I don't even know what I'd do with money if you handed it to me right now. I'd spend it fast just to make the feeling stop. That's why I'm not handing you money, I said. I'm handing you a different feeling. We fixed the faucet. It took 3 trips to the hardware store because men will always make 3 trips when they could make 1 if they listen to their mother. And some traditions are worth keeping. Sunday morning, I woke before dawn and pulled out the Florida binder again. I wrote a letter, not to send, to say, addressed to Daniel, because saying things to him on paper kept me from saying them to ghosts in my sleep. I told him the duplex hums, the tenants pay on time, the AC sings after a hiccup. I told him the land trust stands sturdy, that Iona is a wall with a door I control. I told him Andre signed and Marcus is walking toward a chair in a counselor's office, and that sometimes in the middle of the night I hold the safe deposit key like a rosary and count until my pulse slows. I told him the gold is where he put it, and that I touched the tubes just long enough to remember their weight so I wouldn't panic if a day ever came when I had to lift them. Then I made coffee and sat on the porch and watched the block wake up. The woman with the fluffy dog, the man with a cigar who never lights it, the kids taking turns on one bike because sharing is a lesson this city teaches early. My phone buzzed. A text from Andre. Lunch next week. Just us. No papers. My treat. I typed back, Tuesday. No Whole Foods pie. Real food. He replied with a laughing emoji and a heart. The heart looked like a sticker a little boy gets at the dentist for being brave. The day the title company finally emailed a more formal request, attaching a preliminary net sheet with numbers they thought might dazzle, Iona dropped a 1-sentence reply. My client is not interested. All future communications to this office only. She BCC'd me and our Florida counsel. Within an hour, Florida counsel forwarded a note. Realtor reached out again to tenants directly, advised them to forward any inquiries to us, sent notice of interference. The tenants texted me. We told them to call your lawyer. We don't talk to strangers. I sent back 3 words. Good stewardship, thank you. My English bent into theirs on purpose. We take care of each other across languages here. That night, I pulled out the composition book and wrote, Florida fortified. Trustee acceptance executed. Memo recorded. Title bell set. Realtors persisted. Counsel deflected. Boys unaware. Quiet holds. Then, in the margin I drew a tiny fence. I shaded it in. I thought of Daniel's hand steady on a saw, the way he would pause before the cut, listen to the wood like it had an opinion. I was trying to be that careful not just with lumber but with blood. Secrets rot families when they're used like power. They save families when they're used like medicine. The dose is the difference. I measured twice. Cut once. And I put the saw away before anybody noticed the new shape of the room. Baltimore will tell you who you are if you let it. Our block is a chorus. Some sing loud, some hum, but everybody's got a part. After weeks of papers and keys and quiet chess, I needed to hear voices that weren't asking me to sign something. I needed women who know the difference between a storm and a hard rain. Margot showed up first, knocking a rhythm that's been the same since we were 30 and swapping coupons like war plans. I brought greens, she said, sliding in without waiting for me to say come. And gossip, which is just greens for the mind. We cleaned collards at the sink, snapping ribs, dragging grit off leaf by leaf. The conversation moving the way water does when it's got somewhere to be. I saw Andre the other day, she said, not accusing, just reporting. Suit shiny as a new Baptist deacon, talking to Mr. Wilson about appraisals. Mr. Wilson told him, You don't appraise a life while the widow is still wearing black. She paused for effect, satisfied. Men need elders. Men think being a son is the same as being a shepherd, I said, flicking a stem into the bowl. It isn't. The Wilsons came by later with a pie and the kind of advice that wears overalls. Mr. Wilson is 74. Vietnam on his shoulders and a garden in his bones. Mrs. Wilson wears a hat to church that says she remembers when hats meant something. They sit on my couch like furniture that came with a house. We heard some talk, Mr. Wilson said, straight to it. Talk travels fast when money is in the sentence. He looked me in the eye. You need folks to look you in your eye and tell you you're doing right. You're doing right. Mrs. Wilson patted my knee like a comma. And if you need me to take you to the doctor for that letter, I will. I know where to park so the young people don't steal your spot. We laughed, and it tasted like relief. I told them small pieces. Nothing about Florida, nothing about gold. Just enough to let them know I was standing, not being stood for. When they left, they hugged me the way older people do, pat pat rub. Blessings snuck into motion. On Wednesday, the church ladies called a visitation. That was really an inspection with casseroles. Sister Alma, who ran the usher board like a boot camp. Deaconess Ruth, who could pray the paint off a wall. Miss Janine, who knows every city clerk by name and whose Tupperware has seen more kitchens than I have. They brought pound cake and pineapple punch and a list of what needed doing. We will not let you slip through cracks that don't even exist, Alma announced, standing in my doorway with her gloves on like a nurse. Where's your blood pressure pill bottle? We checking dates. They sat me down and measured my pressure, measured my fridge, measured my composure without calling it that. Janine took a photo of Iona's card and said, "If any paper shows up at the church, it goes to her, not the pulpit." Ruth laid a hand on my head and prayed in a voice that went low and wide. "Lord, plant Miss Lou like a tree by the water. Let her sons see shade and not mistake it for darkness." When she finished, we all said amen with our own accents. Some pretty, some just necessary. Thursday Bible study. I sat in my usual pew, third from the front, aisle seat. I like to keep one shoulder open to the world. The sanctuary was the color of hard-earned hope. Stained glass throwing jewel tones on brown skin, fans moving like a slow ocean, babies fussing at a respectful volume. Reverend Brooks preached from Proverbs. Wisdom is a house with 7 pillars. And he didn't look at me when he said, "A wise son listens to his mother's instruction." He looked at everybody, which is how a man does justice when the people he loves are implicated. After the benediction, I felt eyes. Not mean eyes. Curious eyes. Protective eyes. Andre and Marcus were there, 2 rows back, separate ends of the pew, their bodies sending 2 different signals and both of them mine to read. Andre approached first. The half-smile he uses when he's testing the ground before stepping. "Mom," he said, "you look good." "I am good," I said and meant it. "You eat." "Grabbed something," he said. Translation. A wrap he ate standing up between meetings. He lowered his voice. "Reverend called me this week." "I know," I said. "He's a shepherd. He counts his sheep." "I didn't like being corrected," he admitted. "But I needed it." "Welcome to church," I said, and he laughed, small and real. Marcus hung back, then came forward, arms crossed like a chest is a shield. "Them church ladies checked my mama," he said with exaggerated indignation, looking past me to Sister Alma gossiping with a deacon like 2 generals after a battle. "They weigh you. They'll weigh me if I get too close. They love loud," I said. "You could stand some of that." He shifted on his feet, then said in a low voice, "I went to the counselor." He said it like a confession and an accusation at once. "How was it?" "Like pulling a splinter I couldn't see," he said. "Hurts and then it don't." I squeezed his forearm. "Go back," I said. "Let them find the rest." Reverend made his way over, the corridor of pews making a little aisle for him. He shook the boys' hands like he was shaking men's hands, not their mother's sons. "Boys," he said, "you did good coming today." He turned to me. Sister Louise, he added, would you mind if I stopped by this week? No agenda. Just to sit. Bring your wife, I said. I made pickled beets. He grinned. She'll run for her purse, he said, then stepped closer, dropping his voice. I told the board today. We protect our elders by listening, not by telling. If anyone calls the office to run around you, they'll hit a wall. Make the wall pretty, I said. Men respect a wall more when they think it's there for decoration. He chuckled. You always could preach, he said, then moved on to the next handshake, the next hurt, the next hallelujah. On the way out, Miss Janine hooked her arm through mine. You know you can refuse help without refusing love, she said, a sentence she delivered like soup. Simple, hot, sustaining. Some folks don't know the difference. Teach him. I'm trying, I said. You're doing, she corrected. Trying is what men say when they still want credit while doing wrong. We stood on the church steps. The city spread out in brick and siren and sunshine. A young mother wrangled 2 toddlers into a car seat across the street. Hair scarfed, patience thin but present. An older man shuffled by. His gait turned sideways by a stroke. His hat still sharp. Life went on being itself. That afternoon, I hosted coffee for the women who raised me into the woman who raised my sons. We sat around my table and talked about things women keep in their mouths until they find the right room. How control wears the clothes of love. How sons turn into men the day their mothers stop being the ground and start being a person with their own weather. How the city takes and gives and how we keep ledger without becoming accountants of grief. We told the truth the way women do. Out of one side of the mouth with humor, then out of the other side with tears that don't demand a scene. I remember when my boy tried to take my car keys, Sister Alma said, eyes flashing. I told him, baby, I taught you to walk. Trust me to know when to sit. He walked home. I kept the keys. Mine tried to refinance my house, Ruth said, sipping her punch like anesthesia. Said the rate was too good to pass up. I said, so is my peace. We laughed until our sides hurt and then we sat quiet for a heartbeat, honoring the ache that sits under laughter like bedrock. When they left, my house felt taller, as if the walls had stood up straighter under the weight of all that truth. I swept crumbs, hummed a hymn, checked Daniel's eyes and saw nothing but the front steps and the shifting light. That evening, Andre texted again. I'm trying to be better. I stared at the word trying and remembered Janine's correction. Type back do. He replied, yes ma'am. Smiled. There are sentences that rewire a man if he'll let them. I didn't want saving. Not by a son who thought safety meant a pen in his hand and my name under it. I wanted listening. I wanted respect. I wanted the dignity I'd earned surviving the city, the schools, the seasons of marriage that could have broken me but bent me instead. In the pew in my kitchen on my porch I claimed it. I would not be saved by a son who thought I was drowning on dry land. Word travels in Baltimore the way heat does. Fast, invisible, and changing everybody's mood. By Monday, the whispers about an estate sale at Miss Lou's had reached corners I hadn't swept in years. I could feel it in the sideways looks at the market, in the well-meaning questions on my voicemail. Sis, do you want me to tag the church swap page? It was time to say something out loud, not just with lawyers and locks, but with my own voice in my own yard. I made a sign on cardboard with a Sharpie, neat teacher letters that wouldn't be mistaken. No estate sale. No listings. Please respect the family. Then I taped it to the garage door and propped the side gate open. The neighborhood knew an open gate was an invitation and a message both. I texted Andre and Marcus. Come by at 5. No papers. Work clothes. At 4:30 I swept the garage. Sawdust rose in a soft halo, maple and memory. Daniel's bench sat under the window, both altar and workhorse. The pegboard, teeth restored, held wrenches that remembered his hands. A coffee can of bent nails he never threw out because there's good metal in there if you listen. The smell was him more than his suits ever were. Margot wandered over first, a pie plate under her arm like a hall pass. "You making a scene?" she asked, proud. "I'm making a stand," I said, and set out folding chairs like church picnic seating. Mr. Wilson ambled in, hat tilted, and leaned in the doorway as if guarding the line between outside and in. "Daniel kept this space like a sanctuary," he murmured, eyes soft. "Men need sanctuaries that smell like work, not whiskey." At 5 on the dot, Andre's sedan pulled up. He got out in jeans and a soft t-shirt I'd bought him one Christmas before he decided casual meant polo. He looked around, took in the chairs, the sign, the pegboard. "Okay," he said, half smiling. "A town hall." "It's a reckoning," I said. Marcus rolled up 5 minutes later, cap backward, hands already twitching like he needed to move something to think. He clapped Mr. Wilson's shoulder, nodded at Margot, then stopped short at the workbench like he'd seen a portrait of himself in a place he didn't expect. The bench held 3 items I'd placed like sacraments: Daniel's Sunday watch, the little wooden car he and Marcus carved for a 5th grade soapbox derby, and a beat-up ledger from the year Andre started law school, expenses tracked in Danielle's block letters, tuition, books, gas, Lou's wig after chemo, with a smiley face next to it to make me laugh. I stood between my sons and the bench. "You brought a notary into my kitchen," I began, no thunder, just true. "You brought movers into this garage. You took a check to a counter with a signature that did not belong to you. And you told a pastor you wanted to protect me by holding the reins. Now you're going to listen to the man you can't hear anymore." Marcus huffed, defensiveness rising like steam. Andre's face shifted into that lawyer calm. I tapped the ledger. "Your father tracked every dollar like it had a story. He never forgot why he was spending. He didn't sell his tools when money got tight. He took on one more job. He fixed a porch. He moved slow. He would rather mend than flip." I opened to the page with Lou's wig, and turned it so they could see. "This isn't about hair. It's about dignity." He understood it had a cost. He paid it without making me feel like a bill. Margot sniffed, loud and appreciative. Mr. Wilson said, "Tell it," under his breath. I held up the wooden car, the little red paint chipped at the edges, wheels that never rolled straight. "He made this with you," I said to Marcus. "One Saturday. You got mad when it didn't win. He told you, 'Son, if winning is the only thing you know how to feel, you're gonna be hungry your whole life.' He made you sand the edges anyway." Marcus's jaw worked, then eased. He took the car from me like it might break. "He said that," he murmured, eyes wet without drama. "He said I was racing the wrong people." "And you," I said to Andre, picking up the watch, the face worn faint from Sunday polish. "He gave you this when you passed the bar. Said, 'Wear it when you remember you're a man before you're a lawyer.'" I tilted my head. "Do you?" Andre's mouth trembled, and in the blink of it I saw the boy who lined up his Hot Wheels just so and cried when one chipped. "Not enough," he said, and the honesty unclenched something in the room. I set the watch on the bench, metal against wood. "This is not an estate sale," I said, gesturing to the open door, the chairs, the block. "This is a public cancellation. Anyone who asks, anyone who whispers, anyone who wants to list my life online, tell them Miss Lou said no. Tell them the only thing being distributed today is memory." Marcus paced to the doorway and back, breathing like a man trying to smoke out an ache without a cigarette. "So what are we doing?" he asked, frustration at half-mast. We're putting our hands on what he loved, I said. And we're saying out loud what we did wrong. Then we're choosing different. Silence sat with us a while, honest and uncomfortable. Mr. Wilson cleared his throat and found a screw to tighten that didn't need tightening. Margot folded and unfolded her pie plate like prayer. Andre spoke first. I brought my job into my mother's kitchen, he said, voice low. I called my ambition care, and rushed the pace because speed is how I win. I thought if I could get to signatures I could skip your pain. That was me protecting me from feeling helpless. That's a confession, not a justification, I said. Keep going. He looked at Marcus. I judged you to make myself feel better, he said. I thought your mess made my polish look like virtue. It didn't. Marcus blinked, startled by an apology he didn't see coming. His posture dropped an inch, the kind of softening men don't choose often enough. I stole from my father, he said, words thick, throat raw. I told myself it was ours. It wasn't. I was scared. I acted like a boy who didn't trust the woman who raised him and the man who taught him to tighten a bolt. Mr. Wilson nodded, solemn. That's a man talking, he said. Let him finish. And I brought men here, Marcus continued, tears now, no hiding. Strangers. To touch his tools. I disrespected his hands. I ain't slept right since, Ma. Good, I said, not to be cruel, but because some guilt is the right size for growth. Now put your hand where it belongs. He reached out and placed his palm flat on the workbench. The wood had a way of taking heat from skin and giving it back calm. Marcus's shoulders dropped. For the first time since the funeral, he finally stopped moving. We stood a long minute like that. Andre stepped closer, fingertips grazing the edge of the bench, reluctant, reverent. He wiped his face with the heel of his hand and laughed a little laugh that stayed in his throat. If Dad were here, he'd make a list, he said. Number 1, fix the back steps. Number 2, oil the miter saw. Number 3, apologize to your mother. Do number 3 now, I said. They did each in their own tongue. Andre with words. I'm sorry I made you an obstacle course instead of a person. Marcus with heat. A hug that pressed apology into my shoulder. Neighbors drifted in, Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, the teen from up the block who likes to watch Daniel's tools like TV. Even Reverend, who just happened to be walking by. Which is how pastors cover their interventions. I said what needed saying in front of them. Not to shame my boys but to anchor the truth in community memory. There is no estate sale, I repeated. If you see a flyer, tear it down. If someone knocks asking prices, send them to pastor or to me. If my sons bring strangers in here, you call me before you call them. We will handle our house. Reverend lifted a hand like he was blessing a meal. The church will put out a notice, he said. Estate sale cancelled. Miss Louise requests privacy and prayers. Any inquiries will be directed to council. He side-eyed Andre, who nodded, chin up, taking his medicine with grace. The teen edged closer, eyes big on the tools. Mr. Daniel taught me to sand one time, he said shy. Said I got patience in my fingers. You do, I said. Come by Saturday. We'll oil the saw together. You bring your mama to sit and talk with Margot so nobody says Miss Lou got a boy in her garage without a chaperone. He grinned, relieved by my bluntness, and the room laughed the easy laugh of a solved problem. As the sun slid low, the garage took on that golden light that makes even old things look like they were always meant to be. Marcus picked up the wooden car again, turned it over in his hand like it might give him instructions. I'm seeing the counselor again tomorrow, he said, not looking at me. He said my anger is grief jogging in place. That man earns his copay, I said. Tell him your mother said he can have a slice of peach pie if he keeps you honest. Andre checked his watch, the Sunday one he hadn't worn in months, and slipped it on without fanfare. He looked different with it. Softer. More like himself. I emailed the concierge lady and told her to lose your number, he said. I CC'd Ayana. I told Evan not to do business on our grief. Good, I said. Tell him Miss Lou said thank you for minding his lane. When the chairs were folded and the neighbors trickled home, when the sign on the garage door caught the evening breeze and flapped like a stubborn flag, I stood at the threshold and felt an ache that wasn't pain exactly. It was a stretch. The kind you feel when a scar loosens. Inside the house, I wrote in my composition book. Estate sale cancelled. Publicly. Memory objects on bench. Watch, car, ledger. Confessions spoken. Andre, accountability. Marcus, remorse. Community as witness. Partial thaw. Then I underlined partial. You don't declare victory in the first warm day of March. You note it, you enjoy it, you keep your coat by the door. I turned off the garage light. The window held the last slice of sun and then let it go. In the quiet, I heard Daniel anyway. Not with my ears, but in the way the bench held his sons up like it had been waiting to. The work wasn't done. It had finally begun. Marcus put his hand on the workbench and finally stopped moving. The envelope looked harmless, the way a stray dog looks harmless until you see the whites of its eyes. It arrived by courier on a Tuesday, cream paper, heavy, my name typed with an impatient font. I sliced it open with the butter knife I keep in the drawer where I also keep warranties and funeral programs. Inside, a petition stamped and numbered, full of clever words that tried to sound like care. Application for temporary protective oversight and expedited accounting. Filed by a boutique firm I recognized from LinkedIn, the one that takes concierge calls and wears empathy like a rented suit. The signature at the bottom wasn't Andre's. It was his partner's friend, the one who smiles too wide in holiday photos. I sat at the table with the petition under my palm and felt my pulse move up into my throat where anger lives before language. The allegations tiptoed. They said things like concerns have been raised, and to ensure timely action and to prevent undue delay. They cited my recent cognitive stressors, the possible confusion around bank accounts, and this part made my teeth hot. The elders' inconsistent responses about asset disposition, including out-of-state property. They requested the court appoint a temporary financial overseer, not a full guardian, how merciful, to streamline decisions and safeguard against predatory actors. The proposed overseer, an outside fiduciary, recommended by counsel. Counsel being the boutique firm, which felt a little like a fox recommending a lock for the henhouse that just happens to require the fox's thumbprint. I didn't call Andre. Not yet. Call Diana. I need you to see this with your own eyes, I said, voice steady like a table even if I felt like a glass set on its edge. It's here. She told me to sit tight. 15 minutes later, she was in my kitchen in flats and a blazer, hair pulled back, eyes alert like a conductor hearing a symphony go off tempo and raising a baton to snap it back in time. She read the petition, thumb on the margin, then flipped it over and checked the certificate of service. They filed ex parte, she said. Tried to walk it in without a hearing and get a temporary order. Can they do that? Yes. They can try, she said. Today they did. Tomorrow they'll wish they hadn't. She set the paper down and pulled her laptop out like a weapon. We fight with paper, she said. They wanted a storm. We bring a roof. She moved fast, fingers setting down filings the way a carpenter sets nails. Precise, one blow each. First, A notice of representation and objection to ex parte relief. Calm voice, sharp spine. Second, a motion to strike affidavit, pointing out that the concerns were hearsay stacked on assumptions, and that the evidence of confusion was a bank incident the bank had already flagged and corrected. My call, my instruction, my ID on file. Third, a capacity packet. My doctor's letter stating I was oriented to person, place, time, facts, and full legal capacity. Attached, the video we recorded per Iana's plan. Me in a blue blouse saying my name, my address, why I chose a trust, eyes clear, voice steady. The notary's seal looked like a stamp you'd use to keep devils out. Then she drafted an affidavit of events, structured like my composition book. Dates, facts, who said what doors were locked, who brought movers into my garage. She added Reverend Brooks's brief statement. He'd given her permission earlier that week in case we ever needed to quote a shepherd, that I demonstrated clarity and dignity, declined guardianship, and was not in his view a candidate for protective oversight. She filed everything electronically, then called the clerk to confirm receipt. We'll see a judge by Friday, she said. If they force it sooner, we're ready. When Andre called, his number lit my phone like a fire alarm. I let it ring once, then answered. Mom, he said, voice tight. You're about to get something ugly. I did not file it. Evan didn't file it. His friend did on his own. I swear to you. He did it for you, I said. Not a question. For him, Andre said quickly. To curry favor. To look decisive. I told him to stand down the second I saw the draft. He went around me. That's your problem to fix, I said. Iana is fixing mine. He exhaled, a sound of a man who finally sees the mess on his own shoes. I deserve that. I'll submit a withdrawal letter and an apology to the court. And to you. Put it in writing, I said. Then bring it to my table and read it out loud. I will, he said. Quiet. Hurt with himself, not with me. Progress. By Thursday, we were in a courtroom that smelled like old books and old fights. The judge was a woman with silver hair and eyes that didn't miss a thing. The other side's counsel showed up with a stack of glossy exhibits and the kind of confidence that comes in on a retainer. Iana stood with a thin folder and a look I've come to love. Polite predator. Your Honor, the other attorney began, his voice smooth as hotel jazz. We are here because delay is danger. The respondent, Miss Carter, is beloved. We want her supported, not exploited. There are indications of confusion around assets, particularly an out-of-state property, and a bank incident where a check was presented by someone other than the account holder. Iana interrupted, flagged by the bank, reported by Miss Carter, and stopped. That incident shows vigilance, not confusion. The judge raised a hand. One at a time. Apologies, Iana said, not sorry. The other attorney continued. We simply ask for a temporary overseer to streamline decisions. Iana stepped to the lectern. Your Honor, what they ask for is control dressed in Sunday clothes. My client is grieving, yes. She is not incapable. She anticipated precisely this kind of overreach and prepared. Videos, doctor's letter, trust instruments. We filed them this morning. She slid the capacity packet across to the clerk. You'll see Miss Carter on camera, giving a clear explanation for creating a revocable trust, naming no successor yet, identifying her assets generally, and stating her wishes. You'll see a physician's letter documenting full capacity. You'll see affidavits documenting attempts by family and associated counsel to pressure, to solicit, to intrude. What you won't see is confusion. The judge watched the video on a small tablet, her face neutral, the kind of neutral that is actually attention. My face on the screen looked like a woman I'd follow into a storm. She nodded once, then looked at the opposing counsel. "Why X part?" she asked. "For speed," he said. "For protection." "Protection from what?" the judge asked. "The only predatory conduct I see documented is a third party presenting a check with a forged signature, by her son, and an attempt by associates of a law firm to solicit a sale of assets. Miss Carter," she turned to me, "do you wish for any court-appointed oversight?" "No, Your Honor," I said, voice steady. "I have counsel. Have a trust. I have a doctor who says my mind is sound. I have a church that loves me and knows my phone number. I need you to protect my right to say no." Iona raised an eyebrow like a baton. The judge smiled, almost not. "Motion denied," she said crisply. "Petition struck for lack of evidence. Ex parte approach admonished. Counsel is warned against future filings without concrete cause. Miss Carter's objections are sustained. Costs to be considered at a later date." Then, with a glance that was both a warning and an invitation to grow up, she added, "This court prefers family to work out family matters without using our docket to dress up impatience." The other attorney started to say something about respectfully requesting, but the judge was already moving on, her clerk calling the next case. The sound of the gavel was unnecessary. Iona's look toward me was enough. Roof. In the hallway, Andre stood waiting, tie askew, face pallid. He held a letter. He handed it to me. "I filed this," he said. "Withdraw and apology. I told the court my firm will erect internal walls. I told them I was wrong." He swallowed. "I told them I forgot my mother is a person, not a file." "Good," I said. "Now say it to me." He did. Right there in the corridor where strangers politely pretended not to eavesdrop. He told me he was sorry, and sorry did not fix anything, and he would fix the thing sorry couldn't. He said he had told Evan that any concierge program that touched our family was finished. He said he would present to the church seniors group about elder exploitation and the tricks firms use to make greed sound like support. "I'll answer questions," he added. "Even the ones that make me look bad." "Especially those," I said. Marcus came late, a man half-running, breathless, hair messy like he'd been wrestling with something. Himself, probably. He looked at me, then at Iona, then at Andre's letter in my hand. "Did we lose?" he asked, fear like a reflex. "We won," Iona said before I could. "You almost lost. There's a difference." He nodded, eyes darting with that flighty guilt. He turned to me. "I signed the stewardship paper," he blurted, like confession needed to get out before he lost nerve. "It's in my truck. I was gonna bring it after." "Bring it now," I said. He ran out, came back with the envelope, laid it in my hand like a sacrament. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. "Good," I said. "Now go to counseling. Keep going. Don't stop just because the judge said a sentence you like." We walked out of the courthouse into a day that looked like it had been washed. The city after rain is a mirror. You can navigate by reflections if you know the angles. Anna turned to me. "We'll send a notice to the firm," she said. "All future contact goes through me. We also file a request for costs. Probably won't stick, but the point is the paper. Paper teaches." "Paper teaches," I repeated. I took a breath that reached all the way to the points of my ribs. "Thank you." She shrugged like she'd just ironed a shirt. "They brought a storm," she said. "I brought a roof. I went home and made stew. The kind that sits on the stove for hours, low and slow, turning tough into tender. I set 3 bowls on the counter, texted my sons. Food's on. No papers. It came. We ate. We didn't talk about court. We talked about the game and Mr. Wilson's tomatoes, and Sister Alma's crusade against short skirts in the choir, and how grief can make a day feel like it has more hours than God intended. We cleared our bowls and washed them together, water running, shoulders bumping, a truce with soap in it. When the house was quiet, I sat with my composition book and wrote, "Petition struck. Capacity proved. Video held. Andre apologized, filed withdrawal. Marcus signed. Iona roofed the storm." I underlined roof twice and drew a small house. Then I closed the book and let my mind rest on the sound of Daniel's saw, steady and sure, an old music I could still hear under the new noise. The first text came at 4:12 a.m., when even the sirens sleep. Storm spinning, the weather app said. Cone of uncertainty hugging Daytona like an overfamiliar cousin. The nurse tenant wrote, "Small hurricane maybe. We brought in the porch plants. We're okay." She attached a photo of the geranium on the kitchen table and the rubber mat rolled up like a cinnamon bun on the counter. Calm in her words. Care in her hands. By breakfast, the news had settled on a name that sounded too pretty for a storm. I forwarded the alert to Iona and to our Florida council. 10 minutes later, council replied with a checklist. Premiums current, wind mitigation on file, flood rider in place, deductible confirmed. "I'll place a pre-storm notice with the carrier," she added, casual as ordering coffee. "It bumps you to the top of the line if claims hit Monday." I texted the tenants. "Board windows if you feel safer. Send me receipts." They replied with a thumbs up and a heart, then a photo of the nurse's brother drilling plywood into the frames, lines straight, edges neat. Daniel would have approved. When the first lash of rain hit Florida, Baltimore was bright as a brass buckle. I set a pot of beans on to soak and checked the storm track every hour like a new mother checking a sleeping baby. Anna called, voice smooth as truce. "If the wind shifts ugly, we call the roofer and the AC guy the second the advisory lifts," she said. "We already confirmed they'll prioritize you. Paper, it turns out, can ask the weather to stand in line." The storm clipped Daytona, cranky but not cruel. By midnight, the rain thinned, the radar calmed, and the nurse sent me a video of the porch floor. Water rippled but not rising. Her voice a whisper like prayer. "We good, Miss Louise. We good." Insurance sent a "we're here if needed" auto-response. We didn't need. The next afternoon, the brother texted. "One shingle missing, corner of back roof." I called the roofer from our first gut Reno days. He answered on the second ring like old friends do and said, "I got you." He sent a man who climbed a ladder with Daniel's grace, replaced the shingle, and left a bill that looked like kindness. I paid it same day and tipped the man because storms take more out of folks than they invoice. 2 weeks later, when flights were cheap and my bones felt steady, I decided to go see the duplex myself. Not because I distrusted the reports. Because I wanted to lay eyes. Iona nodded when I told her. "I'll alert council," she said. "Travel light. Carry nothing but your key and your name." I flew down on a Tuesday with a carry-on and Daniel's Orioles cap tucked into the side pocket. The air hit me like warm bread when I stepped out of the airport, wet and sweet, salt threaded in. I rented a small white car with a dashboard that looked like a spaceship and drove to the street I could find with my eyes closed. Even in a new city, the palm tree by the plaza still leaned like it was listening. The duplex stood where we left it, the paint a modest sand color, the porch rail Daniel had rebuilt holding strong. The bienvenido/welcome mat was back out, the geranium back in its corner, pink like a secret. I didn't announce myself. I texted the nurse. "I'm in town. No need to host. Just walking by to tell the house thank you." She replied with a smiley that looked like my niece's handwriting and said, "We'll wave." As I passed, she stepped out, wiped her hands on a dish towel because some gestures are universal, and waved from the top step. Her brother lifted his chin from the driveway like men do when they mean respect without ceremony. I waved back, then kept walking to the corner where the live oak throws good shade. I stood there and breathed. On the way back, I let myself into the vacant side, our side. We always keep one unit open if we can afford it. Daniel called it our emergency room and our quiet. The air smelled like pine sol and settled dust. Light slanted through the blinds, laying stripes across the floor like the memory of water. I opened the windows and let the ocean thread the rooms with its wide breath. I put my hand on the kitchen counter we'd sanded smooth, the laminate that had cost more than we wanted and less than people thought. The cabinet door under the sink still stuck a little unless you lifted it as you pulled. Daniel's fix for a cabinet that was a 1/4 inch out of true. I lifted and pulled. It opened like a good habit. In the bedroom, I slid open the drawer of the little dresser we'd left for tenants who came light. There, under a stiff motel Bible someone had forgotten, was a folded note in Daniel's block letters. How many times had we been here since he died? Enough that I should have found it. But grief is a filter. It lets certain light through at certain times. The note said, "Lou, if you're reading this without me, it means the ocean still moves and you still breathe. Keep the place simple. Don't brag. Fix what breaks fast. Don't sell unless the porch stops feeling like a porch and starts feeling like a burden. If that day comes, get a good price, make a fuss about the roof pitch, and take the money slow. Remember why we bought this. So we'd have somewhere else to go if Baltimore broke our hearts, and so a nurse could rest between shifts. If the world gets loud, come sit on this floor. The sound the ocean makes is the truth about God. Constant and not about you. Use the coins only if you must. You'll know the must. And don't punish the boys. Teach them. If they don't learn, protect the grandbabies we don't know yet. Love you. Lock the slider. The sticks. Lift it first. I sat on the bare floor and cried without making a scene. The kind of crying that cleans, not wrecks. I laughed too, out loud, at make a fuss about the roof pitch, because that man could turn an inspection report into poetry and an argument into a shopping list. I folded the note back the way I found it, then didn't. I took a photo with my phone, printed it at the pharmacy by the plaza, and slipped the copy back under the Bible. The original went in my wallet behind my driver's license, next to a picture of the boys when they were missing front teeth and calling each other by superhero names. Some truths you carry against your name. That evening, I walked to the beach with my sandals in my hand. The water was that gray-blue that looks like a work shirt, steady and useful. People dotted the shore. Old men fishing, a child building a lopsided castle, a woman running with earphones like she was chasing a different version of herself. I stood where the tide could reach me but not take me and let the foam fizz around my ankles. Baltimore lives in my chest, brick and horn and grit, but the ocean lives in my breath. I felt Daniel beside me the way you feel warmth in a room with a closed oven door. On the way back, I stopped at the Cuban bakery, the same one by the strip mall lawyer's office, and ordered café con leche and a guava pastelito. The woman behind the counter called me mommy because love is cheap and priceless in places like that. I sat and let the sugar burn a hole through my sadness until only sweetness remained. I slept that night in our empty unit with the windows open and the slider latched. Lift first, then slide, like the note said. The ocean hummed a song under the city noise, and I dreamed of Daniel measuring twice and cutting once and looking up at me to say, "Hand me the square," like I was a person he counted on to make things true. Morning, I wiped the counters, wrote a thank you note to the tenants for the way they treat the porch like a promise, and left a grocery card under their mat with a smiley face like Daniel drew. I texted the roofer to thank him again. I drove to the airport with the cap on my head and the note under my license and a calm that didn't need witnesses. Back home, Baltimore met me with a light rain and a bus stop argument and the smell of chicken boxes somewhere I couldn't see. I walked in my front door and checked Daniel's eyes. The porch, the street, the neighbors lived where I left them. I heated beans, sliced onions, fried cornbread in a skillet that remembers my mother's hands. Andre called at dusk. "How's Florida?" he asked, cautious like a man approaching a dog he used to kick and now wants to pet. I told him about the single shingle, the tenant's care, the ocean's lecture. I did not tell him about the note. Some words are a marriage. You don't share them until they turn into a family recipe. And even then you leave out an ingredient or two so the cook has to learn the feel. "Marcus went to counseling again," he offered. He called me after. We talked for 40 minutes without arguing. He said he's trying to stop sprinting. "Good," I said. "Tell him his mother is proud of him for walking." After we hung up, I opened my composition book and wrote, "Storm past. Insurance, ready barely needed. Roofer honest. Tenants steady. Visit, quiet. Drawer note, Daniel. Instructions. Simple, don't brag, fix fast, lift then slide. Truth about God, constant, not about me. Teach boys. Protect future babies." I underlined constant and wrote it again, smaller, like whispering to myself. At the bottom of the page, I wrote the sentence that felt like a hinge between what was and what will be. I kept the ocean and the keys, and my promise. Iona scheduled the signing for a Thursday late afternoon, when the courthouse naps and the city exhales. We met in her conference room with the blinds half open, the light laying careful stripes across the table like a metronome. Paper waited in tidy stacks. My revocable living trust, the deed transfer for the Whitfield house, the memorandum for the Daytona Land Trust policies, the sub-trust provisions labeled in plain English, not Latin. A notary sat at the end like a quiet witness. The videographer checked the red dot and nodded once. "Say your name," Iona prompted, and I did. "State why you're doing this." "Stewardship," I said. "Not punishment. Protection. Not secrets for power. Privacy for peace." My voice didn't shake. I had already done the shaking in rooms with no cameras. We executed the trust. My house slid into Louise M. Carter, trustee, with a pen stroke that felt like a fence post setting straight. The sub-trusts locked their rails into place. Matched earnings caps, counseling verifications, direct-to-vendor payments, no lump sums, grace paths for emergencies. The firewall clauses for Andre glowed like good seatbelts. No serving as trustee while his firm could profit, disclosures mandatory, conflicts barred. For Marcus, the milestones were spelled out like a map you hand a boy and then step back so he can prove he can follow it. 6 clean months of counseling, debt plan with receipts, employment verification, then eligibility for match distributions toward things that hold value, tuition, principal, tools for a trade. "Guardianship." "Yes." "Withdrawn with prejudice," Iona said, satisfied. "Their boutique friend won't try that door again. We'll file the notice of trust and the deed this afternoon. Title will update in a week." I initialed and signed until my name looked like a river changing course. The notary stamped. Iona stacked. "That's the law," she said, tapping the pile. "Now do the love." The love began with an invitation that sounded like normal. Sunday dinner. I texted the boys and gave them the menu like a spell. Roast chicken, rice and peas, cabbage with smoked turkey, hot water cornbread, pound cake. I did not add no papers, because that was now understood. I added come early, because I wanted margin around the meal, not just salt. Before they came, I set out 2 new envelopes. Not ultimatums, milestones. Inside each, a single page titled Agreement of Progress. Plain words, no legal force, just a mirror. For Andre. Counseling. Intake complete. Schedule attached. Firm firewall. Copy of internal memo received. Church seniors talk. Date set. Outline enclosed. Boundary practice. No estate communications without prior call to me. For Marcus. Counseling. 3 sessions complete. Next 3 scheduled. Debt plan. Credit union appointment confirmed. Budget worksheet attached. Employment. Application submitted. Maintenance apprentice. Interview Tuesday. Boundary practice. No emergency requests. 30-day look back before any ask. I left a line at the bottom. I understand these milestones are for my good and my family's peace. Signature. They arrived 10 minutes apart like a habit they couldn't break. Andre brought flowers he didn't know the name of. Marcus brought seltzer because he's trying to drink less sugar and needed me to know it without words. They saw the envelopes and didn't flinch. Growth is sometimes just a lack of flinching. We'll eat first, I said, and we did. The way we used to when homework showed up on plates and Daniel made nonsense jokes until vegetables disappeared. We passed dishes and said please and thank you and that's fire and try the cabbage like Grace. After seconds and before cake, I put the envelopes on their plates like after-dinner mints. Read, I said. Ask questions. Then sign if you can. Andre skimmed, then slowed. He looked up at me. The seniors' talk is next month, he said. I'm thinking of calling it paper with teeth. Call it what it is, I said. And bring examples. Tell them what you almost did. Men respect a fool who testifies. He nodded, humor shading into humility. And this line, he tapped boundary practice, means I call you before any email leaves my outbox. It means you remember I'm a person, not a project, I said. It means you practice letting me be the one who says yes or no. He signed. He dated. He slid the paper back without fanfare and reached for the hot sauce like sealing a covenant with pepper. Marcus read slower, his finger following the lines like a man tracing a scar. I had my 3rd session Friday, he said, pride trying on its inside voice. We're talking about the way I sprint when I'm scared. I can see you breathing different, I said. He half smiled, not ready for the full one. Credit union Tuesday. The lady said bring all my bills. All means all. Even the ones I'm hiding from myself. Especially those, I said. Shame grows in dark. Money mold, the counselor called it. You open the cabinet and let the light in. He chuckled, real if brief. Apprentice interviews at the school, he added. Fixing boilers and AC and whatnot. The guy said I got good hands. You do, I said. Your father's hands didn't disappear. They're in you. He signed. He dated. He didn't slide the paper back. He held it, as if reminding himself this was his, not a test he'd pass and forget. Then he looked at me, and the boy in him climbed up into his eyes. Do you still love me? He asked, voice smaller than his shoulders. Andre looked at me too, like the question had jumped pews and landed on him. Grief makes grown men 5 again at a kitchen table. I didn't give a speech. I set a plate with another piece of chicken, another spoon of rice, another ladle of gravy. Eat and see, I said. They laughed first, nervous, grateful. Then they ate, and the answer worked its way in the way nourishment does. Slow, cellular, undeniable. After cake, we went over new house rules like a block club agenda. No unannounced visits with helpers. No mail forwarding requests without my signature. All calls from banks, title companies, or concierge folks get a screenshot to Iona and a forward to me. No responses. If you need something, bring documentation and a plan, not a panic. We wrote them on a card and stuck it on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a crab. Marcus took a photo. Andre asked if he could put the list on his office wall, and I told him yes, but under a framed picture of his grandmother so he remembers who he answers to. Later, in the living room, Andre pulled the Sunday Watches band through his fingers. "I've got the seniors talk outline," he said. Section 1. Normalizing grief. Section 2. Scams dressed like services. Section 3. Paper you should already have. Section 4. How to tell your sons no and live to enjoy the awkwardness. "Put humor in it," I said. "If they laugh, they'll remember." Evan asked if he could come. He added, cautious. "He can sit," I said. "He cannot speak." "Fair," Andre said, a word that finally sounded like equity in his mouth, not balance on a spreadsheet. Marcus wandered to the garage, drawn like a moth to the bench. I followed, wiped my hands on a dish towel because that's what women do when their hearts are full of sentences they aren't sure will come out right. He picked up the wooden car and turned it in his palm like a coin you don't want to spend. "I thought about Dad at counseling," he said. "How he'd sit with me when I messed up and make me fix what I could and live with what I couldn't. He didn't let me skip the lesson because I was crying. I won't either," I said. "But I won't teach with a whip." He set the car down and looked at me like he was auditioning for honesty. "I told my counselor I used you like a bank because I didn't know how to use you like a mother." "What did he say?" "Yes." "He said banks close," Marcus said. "Mothers cook." We stood there with that sentence between us, letting it rise like bread. By the week's end, the clerk mailed the stamped copies. Deed recorded, trust acknowledged, memorandum filed. Iona forwarded PDFs with subject lines that felt like exhalations. The house belonged to the trust. The trust belonged to me. The plan belonged to the future. The past belonged to God. Guardianship was a word that went back in the drawer, not to be pulled out again by anyone with clean shoes and dirty intentions. The boys' milestones sat on the fridge under the crab magnet, and on their phones in photo albums they titled Mom's Rules and didn't make private. On Sunday after church, Reverend announced Andre's seniors talk and winked at me in a way only a pastor can, both rebuke and blessing. Sister Alma told Marcus she expected to hear about the credit union appointment, and that she would be checking his posture and his bank receipts. He said, "Yes, ma'am," like a man who has discovered that obedience can be a kind of relief. That evening we ate leftovers at my table and argued about the Ravens and whether pineapple belongs on pizza and which of Daniel's sermons, the porch, was the best. We washed dishes the way people do who are beginning to trust their own hands again. When the boys left, the house was quiet, but not empty. Quiet like a field after planting. I opened my composition book and wrote, "Trust executed. House transferred. Milestones signed. Guardianship withdrawn. Dinner held. Rules posted. Repair begun." Then I added a sentence Daniel would have approved of. "Check your screws in a week. Tighten what settles." The phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. "Interview went well. He used a wrench emoji because men now speak in pictures and I am learning their alphabet." A text from Andre followed. "Drafting my talk. Title Paper with Teeth, and Love." I sent back a heart to both and a fork emoji for good measure. They asked if I still loved them. I set a plate and said, "Eat and see." Sunday broke soft, the kind of light that lays a hand on your shoulder and doesn't demand anything. I brewed coffee and pulled the cedar chest drawer like a memory. The red folder slid forward without argument. I laid its contents on the table. Ledger, copies of deeds, the stewardship plans with my boys' new signatures, the photo of Daniel's Daytona note tucked behind my license. Then the letter I had read in pieces since he died, the one with his block letters and the word he underlined twice like a man drawing rails on a bridge. Protect. I traced the underline with my finger. Protect is not a weapon. It's a shelter. It's a season. It's a promise you keep when nobody is cheering. I said it out loud in my kitchen so the walls could hear. Protect, not punish. The church bulletin sat beside the folder, the seniors' talk announced on page 2, paper with teeth and love, Andre Carter, along with the block club cookout and the community garden planting day. I circled the garden. Today we put in collards and tomatoes and okra that will climb the stakes like it has somewhere to be. By mid-morning we were out there, a square of city lot transformed by shovels and old knees. Margot tied her headscarf tight and handed me seedlings like babies. Mr. Wilson brought compost that smelled like the truth about time. Sister Alma passed out gloves and instructions with equal fervor. Little kids ran the hose like they were baptizing the whole block. Reverend pushed a wheelbarrow, grinning like he'd been waiting all week to be this useful. Plant deep, he said, dropping a tomato into a hole I had widened with my hand. Give the roots somewhere to argue. We laughed, then quieted, the kind of quiet that falls on a group when they realize they're doing something bigger than their bodies. Across the fence, the teen from up the block, now my Saturday sanding helper, held a stake for Marcus, who tapped it in with a mallet like he'd been practicing hitting only what needed hitting. Andre knelt beside Miss Janine, who corrected his spacing with pleasure. Too close, she said. You got to give them room to become themselves. I breathed in dirt and sun and the particular joy of shared sweat. Daniel loved a garden because it tells the truth in slow syllables. You can't bully a seed. You can only tend. After we watered, we stood back and admired how small everything looked and how sure it felt anyway. Sister Alma announced there would be a sign-up to weed, and that anybody who skipped their week would be treated with love and public shaming, in that order. We clapped. The babies clapped because we did. I walked home dirty and happy and a little tender in the hips. Inside I washed my hands and sat with the red folder one more time. I took out a fresh page from my composition book and titled it, Legacy Plain. Then I wrote what Daniel and I had been circling our whole marriage without saying it this clear. Keep the house standing and the porch welcoming. Keep the Daytona duplex quiet and clean. Fix fast, don't brag. Keep the coins as a last door, not a first. Use if breath requires. Keep the boys seen and told the truth. Require their work. Celebrate their steps. Keep the church in the loop when the world gets slick. Keep the grandbabies fed, books, love, shade. I signed it the way I sign permission slips, then laughed because that's what this is. Permission for the future to grow. The doorbell rang in my head. The memory of another day, movers in my garage, papers on my table, fear dressed like help. The real doorbell stayed quiet. I let the echo pass. Afternoon slipped toward evening. I set out tea and a plate of sliced pound cake for whoever might drop by. Marcus texted a photo of a toolbox with his name stenciled on it like a boy's dream come true. Andre sent a selfie with the church seniors. Sister Alma in the middle looking like a warden and a saint. Evan was in the back row, no microphone, his smile small. Progress. I pulled Daniel's letter again and read the line I had skipped the first dozen times because I wasn't ready. If you have to choose between making the boys feel good and making their children safe, choose the children. Protect forward. Protect forward. The words settled in my bones like the weight of a baby you're handing back to a young mother who needs a nap. I thought about grandchildren I hadn't met yet and the ways a family can hand down weather, storms or shade. I thought about the boys as boys, knees ashy, faces sticky, thinking love meant yes until we taught them it sometimes means not yet. I thought about a little girl or boy someday sitting at my table with rice on their plate and a question in their eyes and me saying, "Eat and see." Right then the front gate creaked. I checked Daniel's eyes, porch, steps, sky, and saw Mrs. Wilson heading up with a bag of snaps, her hat tilted like a headline. I opened the door before she could knock. "I made too many," she said, then leaned in, conspiratorial. "There's no such thing as too many. I just wanted to see your face." We sat and snapped beans and talked about nothing that was nothing. Gossip and the price of onions and how young folks need to learn the difference between a playlist and a hymn. The house breathed. The folder lay on the table like a quiet oath. The garden waited for dusk. The city made its noises. My chest did not rise and fall like a hunted thing. When Mrs. Wilson left, I put everything back in the red folder and then did something I had been avoiding because avoidance had been my blanket. I moved the folder into the fire safe. Not to hide it. To honor it. Its place was not a secret anymore. Its place was with the other things we keep because we intend to keep our word. Evening settled, the blue kind Baltimore does best. I wrote one last page in the composition book, in letters cleaner than I can usually manage at the end of a day. "Daniel, your underline held. Chose protect. Chose forward. The boys are walking. Church is loud. The roof is sound. The ocean is patient. The garden is planted. I'm still here." I closed the book, turned off the kitchen light, and stood a moment in the doorway of the garage. The workbench waited, unhurried. The wooden car sat where Marcus left it, paint chipped like a testimony. The Sunday watch lay on the shelf, ticking quiet, refusing to rush me into any more answers than I already had. I smiled at the empty room that didn't feel empty. Thought the game was over. Then the doorbell rang.